and thank you to the members of the public who've also joined us today. May I first of all remind us some of the domestic arrangements that we just need to run through this morning. Please can you ensure that microphones are muted when you're not speaking? I ask that if you are not speaking, you turn your camera off as well, which we've already done. Please try not to interrupt each other, and if you could just put your hand up, that will attract my attention. Members are reminded not to use the messaging or chat function during the meeting. Members are reminded that they should not have alternative communication lines open, in other words, Skype chats, and that if you are contacted by a third party during the meeting, you should bring it to the attention of our legal advisors, please. Can I remind you that you are attending the meeting to speak? If you are attending the meeting to speak and persistently interrupt the meeting, you may be asked to leave the meeting. Additionally, we will be using the hands up function, so please use this if you wish to speak or indicate to me you wish to speak. If you do have any problems with poor connection issues, in the first instance, try turning off your camera if you are speaking at the time. If that does not work, please turn off all incoming video. That does sometimes help, and these options can be found under the 3 dots that are located in the middle of the toolbar on your screen, on the information bar. I'd like to remind everyone present this meeting will be broadcast live on the internet and will be capable of repeated viewings. The whole of the meeting will be recorded, except where there are confidential or exempt items. If you make a representation to the meeting, you will be deemed by Mid-Suffolk District Council to consented to have been recorded. By entering this meeting as a speaker, you are also consenting to being recorded by the council and to the possible use of sound recordings for webcasting and/or training purposes. The council, members of the public and the press may record, film, photograph or broadcast this meeting when the public and press are not lawfully excluded. Today, joining us, we have, in terms of from Mid-Suffolk District Council, we have Ian Deprez, who is our legal advisor. Good morning, Ian.
Good morning, Chairman. I'm here, yeah.
Thank you. Robert Carmichael, who's the governance officer. Robert, good morning. If you just turn your camera on, I just think it's beneficial for everyone just to see who everyone is, just so we all know. Thanks very much. John Pateman G, who's the area planning manager. John.
Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning.
I can't give you video, I'm afraid. I'm working through mobile only.
Jamie Edwards, who's going to be one of the case officers. And we will, hi, good morning, Jamie. And we'll have the ward members who will come on during the application. So just to remind everyone that at Mid-Suffolk District Council, the ward members may speak on applications in their ward, but may not vote. Can I now move on to the agenda? First item on the agenda is apologies for absence and substitutions. Can I ask the governance officer just to roll call members present, please?
Thank you, Chair. So if you could please respond with present or good morning. Councillor John Field.
Good morning.
Councillor Lavinia Haddingham.
Present.
Councillor Hicks.
Yep, present.
Councillor Sarah Mansell.
That hasn't worked. Hello, yes, present.
Good morning, Councillor. Councillor John Matheson.
Good morning.
Councillor Richard Mayer.
Present.
Councillor David Muller.
Present.
And Councillor Andrew Stringer, who is substituting for Councillor Eburn today.
Present.
Lovely, thank you very much. Agenda item number 2 is to receive any declarations of pecuniary or non-pecuniary interest by members. If anyone does have any pecuniary or non-pecuniary interest to declare, can you please use the hands up function? Are there any? No. Okay, that's none declared. Thank you very much. Agenda item number 3 is declarations of lobbying. If anyone has any declarations of lobbying, again, can you use the hand up function, please? No, none to declare. Thank you very much. Agenda item
Yes, we've put our hands up.
Yeah. Well, that's very strange because I'm not seeing any at all on my screen.
I've certainly got mine up as well.
I think there were 5 up, I saw.
Yeah, I haven't got any hands up on my screen, Robert, so you're going to have to manage that because for some reason none have come up.
Okay, Chair.
Can I make a suggestion? Sorry to disturb, but Councillor Hicks, I think you're down as a attendee, not presenter. I don't know if that stops you seeing things.
I'm
That's possible. Hold on.
I'm seeing five.
Yep. Okay.
You might need to.
Robert.
You might need to scroll. Do you have the list open at the side, Chair?
Yeah, I do.
You might need to scroll down because it might just be that they're on the top part shows presenters, and the attendees should have like under Councillor Haddingham. Does it show anything there?
No, nothing.
Oh. Okay. Well, I'll draw. If Chair, if you're happy to, I'll draw your attention to it.
Yeah. Okay, we'll just have to, I'm not sure why it normally does come up on the right-hand box. When a hand comes up, you can follow it, but there's none showing. Okay, so Robert, can you just run through declarations of interest, please? Run through the members.
Yep. So, Councillor Sarah Mansell.
I've been lobbied on both applications that we're seeing this morning. Is that all you need to know?
Yeah. Thank you.
We have Councillor Matheson.
I've also been lobbied on both applications.
Councillor Muller.
Yes, I too have been lobbied on both applications.
Councillor Mayer.
Yes, I've been lobbied on both applications.
Councillor Haddingham.
I suspect all of us have been,
Yeah,
except for possibly Councillor Stringer, because he was a substitution. Is that fair? Councillor Stringer, have you had any lobbying as a...
I'm not aware of any lobbying.
So it's all of us apart from Councillor Stringer because he is substituting. Okay. Thank you for that. Okay. Any declarations of personal site visits by members? Robert, anyone got any hands up, please?
Yep, I have, Matthew. I did a site visit to Hoxne yesterday. It's Lavinia Haddingham.
Okay, thank you very much. Anyone else? Nope. Okay. Thank you for that. Next up is confirmation of the minutes of the meeting that was held on the 24th of June. Now, are there any points regarding accuracy of the minutes? If there are, I'm happy just to come in. Would you like to? Anyone like to come in? Councillor Field?
Just a question on page 9, the section 118.11. It talks about ensuring ring fencing of money secured in section 106 are used for the Bramford area, which I recall, but it has a brackets that says may include Sproughton and the West Ipswich fringe, which I don't recall as part of our discussion.
What we'll do,
some evidence.
Okay, what we'll do, John, is we'll just go back and listen to the tape and just double check that. I think that's the easiest way. We're never going to resolve that now. So, Robert, can I leave that with you just to play that back? Apart from that item, was there anything else? Okay, so could I have a proposer and a seconder for these on the understanding that item 118.11 will just play back the tape and confirm exactly what was said?
I'll propose it.
And who is that, please?
John
Councillor
Matheson.
Matheson. Thank you very much. And who would like to second?
I'm happy to second Lavinia Haddingham.
Thank you very much. And all those in favour, is that agreed? Anyone disagree? Nope. Thank you very
Chair,
much.
we have to do a roll call vote.
Okay.
For that. So, if you could please respond with for, against, or abstain. So, Councillor John Field.
For.
Councillor Lavinia Haddingham.
For.
Councillor Matthew Hicks.
For.
Councillor Sarah Mansell.
For.
Councillor John Matheson.
For.
Councillor Richard Mayer.
For.
Councillor David Muller.
For.
And Councillor Andrew Stringer.
Abstain, I wasn't there.
Thank you, Chair, that's carried.
Lovely. Thank you very much, everyone. The minutes have been confirmed and they'll now be signed at the, obviously normally I'd sign them during the meeting, but we don't have that facility when we're operating virtually, so they'll be signed at the next practical opportunity. Okay, next up is agenda item number 6, to receive any notifications of petitions in accordance with the Council's petitions scheme. Robert, could you come in?
None received, Chair.
Unreceived. Okay, thank you very much. Agenda item number 7 is a schedule of planning applications. Before we begin, I will be changing the order of the applications before us today. The first application before us will be Thurston, and then the Hoxne will be second. As I chair this meeting, I will have to stand down as chairman of the meeting and hand over to Councillor Haddingham for item number 2, because Hoxne is within my ward, and therefore I wouldn't be able to chair this meeting. Okay, so the next item on the agenda is DC 2585 Harvey's Green Plants, Great Green, Thurston. I'd now like to invite John Pateman G to introduce the application to the committee.
Thank you, Chairman. Give me one moment and I will put the presentation on. It's just seems to be delayed. Why is it not sharing it? Try one more time. Can I confirm you can all see the presentation, although be it I haven't put it on full screen yet?
Yeah, it's up, John. Thank you.
Thank you. So this is the application for Harvey's Garden Plant at Great Green, Thurston. It's an application for one dwelling and associated works, including landscaping and access road. So Harvey's Garden Plants is at Great Green, Thurston, and if you can see my cursor, hopefully you can. Harvey's Garden Plants is in the top corner of your screen just there, and this is Great Green as a whole. And just to put the association, this is obviously Thurston Village. We have the primary school, the high school, and rail connections. The site itself is now being shown on screen. Site area is 0.45 hectares. Acres. And that's a close-up of the site. We have some remaining parts of the business, but the site itself is now vacant, and you'll see that on photographs in a moment. To put the Great Green into context, it's within 2 kilometres of the key surface settlement, which has shops and schools and rail connections, as I've said. Just to explain on here, this is the site just in this point here, and from there I've shown 3 routes, one being 1.35 kilometres in terms of the purple to get to the settlement boundary that way. The other in red to get to the settlement boundary, that's 1.98 kilometres, and I did deviate here to get to this settlement boundary, which is 1.66 kilometres in total to the site. Returning to the Great Green area, we need to consider the site, not just as it is now, but also various approvals that are currently capable of commencement. And these have been allowed through decisions or appeals over time. So we have the site. This is the proposal I've superseded on top of the screen in front of you. We have development on the opposite side of the road that has been approved. Now at the moment that's outlined and doesn't have the reserve matters, but the indicative plan shows the 4 red blocks there. We have another approval along Poplar Farm Lane, and we have another one further up that lane as well. That one's through appeal. There are various refusals in the area as well. I've not shown all of those. We have a current appeal case just here going through as well. There is also the refusal, and it's important to note this one, and immediately adjacent and as part of Harvey Garden Plants. This was dismissed at appeal. It's for application DC 18-00143. This recent appeal was very clear that Great Green is a sustainable location and not isolated, and performs a material consideration. It was for 2 dwellings, but it was dismissed on rural character. It wasn't dismissed on sustainability. So the site plan is a full application, so it's everything we have is in front of us. This is for a bungalow, and unlike the adjacent site, this is set back and closer to the remaining buildings and parts of the Harvey garden plants use. It includes, there's a adjacent barn just on the screen here, just a note that has prior approval for conversion into residential use. Openness is maintained to the front of the site. Elevations, so maintaining the rural theme, it's weather-bordered bungalow design. The garage follows suit with the design. Again, low-level bungalow, low-level garage. And this is what it effectively will be replacing. The bungalow would replace this building that's currently on site, which is no longer in use. And as you can see, the use of the site is being moved or has been abandoned at this point. These are images just of the internal area of the site, which would form part of the site. That's the barn that has consent in terms of prior approval for conversion in the background. Just outside, this is Harvey Garden Plant's entrance, which would lead round to the site. And on the left, we have where other approvals are outlined, at least at this stage, have also been given. Taking it from the opposite direction, on the left-hand side this time is this site, and we have existing dwellings on the opposite side, and the approvals for more dwellings in this area here. So, in conclusion, Great Green is a cluster of dwellings and employment, be it a rural one. It is well connected to the location of Thurston settlement in terms of distance. The Thurston Neighbourhood Plan was adopted in October 2019 and formed part of the development plan, and therefore forms part of the material considerations for the determination of planning. Policy 1, which is referred to within the officer's report, does deal with housing development in Thurston and does state that new development in Thurston Parish shall be focused within the settlement boundary of the village as defined in the policy maps. It is noted that this says development and not just dwellings. The site is not within the settlement boundary as defined by the neighbourhood plan. Policy 1 is not taken to be a cap on development outside of the settlement boundary. If it was, it would be in conflict with the rest of the development plan, for example, policy CS1 and CS2, that do allow a prescribed range of development, be it these policies in themselves are also deemed out of date as they do not fully comply with the NPPF. The neighbourhood plan would, if it was a cap on development, would also be in conflict with the NPPF directly, that does allow residential development in the countryside in different forms. It isn't acknowledged that the Parish Council do not agree with this position, and this position has been taken forward previously by the District Council on other development around Thurston. Officers have also taken legal advice as to those other cases on this particular point. In simple terms, the policy seeks to focus development within the settlement boundary, but some development, and it's far likely to be less elsewhere than within the settlement itself, is not restricted. The underlying principle being that the presumption of supporting sustainable development unless there is a material consideration to consider otherwise. This development is not considered to result in harm to amenity. It redevelops a site. It has limited benefit in terms of economy, but there would be job creation. There were no highway concerns, ecology or other concerns. And on this basis, the recommendation is one of approval. Thank you.
All gone quiet.
I don't know what's happening, but I can't
Sorry,
hear
you
anybody at all.
couldn't hear that.
Oh.
Okay. So thanks very much, John. If we now just have any questions or points of clarity, if people just put their hands up. Robert, can you just take me through?
Yep.
Are there any hands up?
We
Please?
have Councillor Haddingham, then Councillor Muller, then Councillor Stringer.
Okay, let's go in that order, please.
Thank you. This is Councillor Haddingham. John, can you just confirm that this barn Well, is that the grey box there? Is that the barn that's got planning permission already, or it's going to have permission to turn into a house?
It has prior approval consent to be a dwelling. Yes.
Thank you.
That's the box.
Who was next?
It's Councillor Muller here, Chair. John, can you please confirm that the actual garden centre is it still open?
I can't confirm that, I'm afraid. I don't believe it is to the public anymore. I believe there is a subsidiary interest adjacent to the site now that is continuing, but I don't know if they're doing that just via mail order or something like that. That might be a question you need to ask the agent, possibly.
The ward members, or the agent, the ward members aren't here today. They're both given written reps. Okay, who was next?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I want to ask the question. I'm rather confused about the statement that the National Planning Policy Framework, it means development is not restricted outside the settlement boundary. I found that very confusing. So I'd like some clarification on that statement. I'm also very confused about the position of policy CS1. CS1 allows, you were saying, development outside of the settlement boundary, but it's out of date, so we've got to ignore it. Well, if we've got to ignore it, why are we assessing it? It was my understanding that where there was a current neighbourhood plan, that basically bolted directly onto the National Planning Policy Framework if the local policies were out of date. So
okay. Let's get clarity. Yeah. Let's get clarity on those points.
No problem. So paragraph 79, for example, within the NPPF allows for housing in the countryside in various forms. For example, barn conversions, and it also allows for housing to suit rural needs. So the NPPF is not prescriptive to say anything outside of the settlement boundary it needs to be refused. It doesn't say that at all. In terms of CS1 and CS2, both are deemed to be out of date because they are of an age that does not comply with the NPPF. This was established through various appeals, not least the appeal at Woolpit that I'm sure most members are aware of. But we have a 5-year land supply at this moment in time, so they are got some weight, but they cannot be given full weight in the context of that. It doesn't mean they can be ignored. They are material considerations and they are applicable in this respect. The neighbourhood plan does not supersede them. It is part of them in terms of being part of the development plan as a whole. There isn't a competition. Ultimately, though, the neighbourhood plan is given significant weight on the basis that it is up to date. It is up to date in terms of the NPPF. However, what I was talking about was the interpretation of policy 1. I would say that the policy is certainly significant and in date if it is not deemed to be a cap on development. If it is deemed to be a cap on development, then it is in conflict with the NPPF, and by being in conflict with the NPPF would make it out of date. So I do not interpret the policy, and we have legal advice on this as well, as the policy is restrictive to that extent that it stops all development outside the settlement boundary. That is the position of the officers before you.
Councillor Stringer, would you like to come back?
Yeah. Yes, I would. You quote paragraph 79. Could you then tell me which paragraph this complies with? A, B, C, D or E?
The other point, of course, is that our local plan is in part out of date, and therefore we are looking at that tilted balance in terms of promoting development, and we have to look at this development, like I said before, the presumption is for sustainable development unless there is material consideration otherwise, and that is at the beginning of the NPPF in terms of the presumption to support development. So in that context, we have to judge this on its merits and whether or not it is favourable or not in the context of whether there is material harm to balance. That is where we are.
Okay. Any other questions at all from members? Any other points of clarity before we move on?
Yes, please.
Yep, okay. So let's go in that order, please.
Okay, thanks, Chair. Mr. Peyton G, you mentioned the planning permission that was rejected for 2 new dwellings, and you stated that this was due to bear with me, sorry. Location within a country outside the defined zone. But sorry, Matthew, can you come back to me? I've lost my place in my notes.
Yeah, of course. Who was next? Was it Councillor
I think that
Muller,
might be
then
me.
Mansell?
Councillor
Okay,
Mansell.
Councillor Mansell. Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, I'd just like to ask for some clarification in that John Peyton G said there would be some job creation by this scheme, yet this proposed development seems to be on top of what was once a cafe, which presumably also had employment. And I wondered if there'd been any investigation into if the existing cafe had gone, whether it was ever likely to be reinstated as a cafe.
No, your policies don't require us to look at that in terms of marketing or continued use in the context of trying to maintain that employment use. There is a loss of employment use in terms of this has a use, but this is also agricultural, so this is a bit of an unusual combination. It's not like it's a straightforward industrial use on this site, and we can be very clear about what maybe the loss of employment could be. I also don't know how long this has been out of use for, or when the cafe closed.
The cafe closed earlier this year.
Okay. In terms of job creation, the job creation is that one dwelling is creating jobs in terms of construction, and it also creates jobs as in supplying people to the services in the local area.
But the job creation in terms of construction is a very short-term affair.
It is short-term. For one dwelling, it creates about 2.5 jobs in the construction industry for about 1 to 2 years. And then in terms of the connection to services, it creates a further 3 jobs long-term. That's according to the 2004 strategic growth plan, which I've got the reference to, but I can't bring that up without closing the presentation.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Mayor, did you want us to come back to you now?
Yes, please. Sorry about that.
Yeah.
In the planning permission for the 2 houses turned down for being not maintaining the intrinsic character of the countryside, is it not also true that refusal also went on to talk about sustainability? And I quote, involves reliance on the private motor car, is therefore contrary to the sustainability objectives of policy FC1, FC 1.1. So is it not true that was rejected both on sustainability and to maintain the character of the countryside?
It refers to it, but it doesn't uphold those as reasons to refuse. The reason to dismiss the appeal, by the inspector ultimately was the rural character of the particular location. And in this case, those 2 dwellings were set in, I don't know if you can see on screen, within this section here of the site, which is far more open than the current site before you. And therefore, as officers, we feel that there is a difference between the 2 sites.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. We have another person who wishes to come in.
Thank you, Chair. We've got Councillor Stringer's got his hand up still.
I think I might have been next.
Councillor Matheson and then Councillor Field as well.
Okay. Councillor Matheson and then Councillor Field.
Right. Yeah. This is Councillor John Matheson. Presentational point first. The history, the planning history. I do find it difficult that it's not in chronological order, and I notice it applies to both applications actually. I've forgotten what some of the abbreviations mean, like PDE. That's a bit of a problem. And I think really somewhat similarly with Councillor Stringer earlier, paragraph 3.4, the development plan for the area comprises a combination of, and neighbourhood plan isn't listed. I would have thought it'd actually been the first one, as it's the most up to date and recent one. Yeah, I think the.
Can I just say that we're in questions at the moment, John?
Yeah,
not
sorry.
Debate.
Well,
so
yeah, sorry. Yeah, you're right.
If you've got a
It's
question,
not
it's not
there.
a debate.
It is. I think we just heard that it is part of the development plan for the area. We've agreed that. One other question.
Yeah, I can answer that. Just to mention that a PDE, I believe, is permitted development inquiry, and I do apologise. Now I've seen the report. The inquiries should have been stripped out of the history. They don't normally get put to members. Anything from a pre-app point of view is normally mentioned separately, and I'd apologise that it's not in order. Again, I will take that back to my colleagues and ask that we check for that in future.
Oh, so that I see that isn't really of any consequence at all. That one then. Okay, that's a help. You
have another question?
Yeah, the other question really was just to clarify. So I think somewhat where Councillor Mayer was going, that the appeal decision, which didn't use sustainability as a reason for dismissing the appeal, that was presumably before the neighbourhood plan was adopted. Was it?
It was, yes.
Right, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Field, you were next.
Thank you. Just a question really about the engagement of the tilted balance again. I seem to have heard that argument in different directions on many occasions. Whether it is engaged because our policies are out of date or not. I wonder if John could just go through that argument again for me.
The argument in terms of the tilted balance is engaged on this occasion. It is housing development and is not in, and our development plan as a whole is not entirely in date. So on that basis, I would say that our judgment is that the tilted balance would engage. This doesn't respond to historical assets, so it's not like the tilted balance gets affected by that. It is a pure housing argument here, and yes, it is engaged.
And our plan is out of date, despite the fact that we have a recently implemented neighbourhood plan.
This is the difficulty. You're into the judgment of one plan versus another. That is not the case. The neighbourhood plan is part of the development plan. The local plan, the core strategy, the focus review are all documents that form the development plan. The fact that one conflicts with the other slightly, unfortunately, is the case here, and we have to take the whole lot as a whole. Now, as the part of the debate, what you decide to give weight to in respect of the relevant elements of your development plan, and that includes the neighbourhood plan, is for your judgment.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other hands up, please, Robert?
We've got. Sorry. Yep, Councillor Haddingham, Councillor Stringer, Councillor Matheson, and Councillor Mayer.
Okay. So if you could take your hands down, but first of all, Councillor Haddingham.
Thanks. So, John, I've just got a question about our papers. On page 112, it says side 6. It's the site layout. Is that the existing one that's already there? Because it seems to show what I thought was the garage. Is basically a house with bedrooms. Is that what's there now? Or I'm a bit confused. Page 112.
As I'm remote working, I don't have a paper copy. I have to close this presentation.
It's same as slide 6, John. Slide 6, which will help you.
If I go back to slide 6.
Yeah, that shows the same.
No, that's slide 6, which is
in our pack. Slide 6 is different. If you go forward one.
Hang on.
No, in our pack it says slide 6. It's the site layout plan.
I just wanted to know if that's the present layout, which I don't think it is, but I can't understand. Like I say, it looks like there's 2 buildings rather than just one.
Oh, yeah, yes, no. In the bundle, I think the original plan has been put in there by mistake. The original start to this application was for 2 houses. During the course of the application, it was removed down to 1 house, which is the slide before you now. So the amended scheme is for just 1 property, and it's
so just to be clear, on page 110 of our papers is what's before us now. What was previously came in but hasn't gone anywhere is what's on page 112.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Councillor Stringer, did you want to come back? Was your hand down? Obviously, I can't see.
Yes, no. I've got a question, Chair.
Yep.
Sorry about this.
No
it's this Gordian knot about up-to-date plans or not. It is my understanding, and please, the officers can correct me if I'm wrong, the NPPF is up to date. The neighbourhood plan is up to date. The neighbourhood plan is in compliance with the NPPF, and those 2 documents together do not trigger the tilted balance. So why do we insist on using an out-of-date document to then be able to invoke the tilted balance?
John, over to you.
Because you can't take the local plan and the core strategy and the focus review out of the equation. You can't ignore their existence. They are part of the development plan. So therefore, they are part of the development plan as a whole with the neighbourhood plan. The neighbourhood plan is in compliance with the NPPF entirely. And it is a significant weight because it is the most up-to-date document in terms of both age and its compliance with the NPPF. It also says that development shall be focused within the settlement. It doesn't say you can't have development here, though. And that is the key point. So regardless of weight, the policy itself is not regarded to be unduly restrictive in the context of this site. If we go further in this debate, though, you're into legalities that I perhaps need to call upon other people to answer. That is my understanding.
Okay. Any other hands up, please, Robert?
Not that I can see, sir. Chair. That's everyone.
Okay, thanks everyone. If anything comes to mind, obviously we can ask later on just before we get into debate. We now move on to public speaking. I'll now ask the Parish Council representatives, Councillor West and Councillor Towers, to speak. Can I just remind you, you have a total of 3 minutes between you to address the committee. So if you'd like to turn your cameras, cameras on, please.
Hello, can you see me?
Yep, we can now see you.
Okay, it'll just be me, Councillor West, speaking on behalf of the Parish Council.
Okay, so it's only 1 speaker now.
Yes.
Okay, so you have 3 minutes.
Okay, thank you. The Parish Council opposes this application for the following reasons. MSDC has already set a precedent for refusal of numerous previous applications for this area on the basis that the developments are in the countryside and isolated from the main settlement. An applicant has lost an appeal also on this basis. The development is outside the curtilage of the settlement boundary, contrary to the May Thurston NDP. The impact on nearby heritage buildings, the reliance on the use of private car to access any facilities in Thurston/Norton. Bus services are very infrequent and the nearest bus stop is over 200 metres away on a busy road with no footpath and therefore unsustainable. There are no safe means of alternative travel modes, such as cycle or foot access to neighbouring facilities. This will lead to the overdevelopment of a small hamlet, which will fail to enhance, protect or conserve the environmental conditions or the character of the area. And finally, the relative ease should planning be granted for a single dwelling to further expand the development to include further 2 dwellings, as originally applied for, once the precedent for development has been established. The Parish Council is concerned that officers in the Development Management Sustainable Communities Department appear to be supporting the application purely on the basis of not having to defend a possible appeal against a refusal further down the line, not on the merits or otherwise of the application. It has been stated that the officers would rather support the single dwelling application than refuse the original 3 dwelling application and risk having to defend an appeal. However, there is nothing to stop the applicant from submitting a further application for more dwellings once a precedent for development has been set. This is a flawed argument, as a future refusal could still be appealed. This is hardly an acceptable basis to make planning decisions. The area planning manager has stated that policy 1 of the Thurston NDP is considered to be out of date because of the use of the word focused. We cannot accept this distorted interpretation of a document that was only recently adopted and further approved by this very council. The parish council contends that the made NTBs should not be ignored by claiming that the MPPF allows development outside the settlement boundary. The Thurston NDP, when taken in full, paragraphs 4.1 to 4.6, please read these, is very clear with regard to why future growth should be focused within the settlement boundary and the type of development that may be considered appropriate outside the settlement boundary. This development is not one of those. The made Thurston NDP is therefore an effective planning tool for applications within the village of Thurston and should be followed. Aside from the major housing developments currently under construction within Thurston, the parish council is concerned that in addition to the 5 current approved major developments, the numerous small developments of 1 to 9 houses that have recently been approved by MSDC only adds to the cumulative pressure on the local facilities and infrastructure, which to date has had no investment whatsoever as a result of any of the construction work. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do we have any questions, please, for the parish council? Robert, do we have any hands that have gone up? Yep. Okay, Councillor Mayor first, then Councillor Stringer.
Thank you. The council, the parish council, are against this development. Are they against development on the site as a whole? In that very soon you're going to have a derelict building. It's going to look unsightly. Do you not envisage any development on this site?
It depends very much on the type of development. The type of development that is acceptable outside the settlement boundary is set out quite clearly in the neighbourhood plan. If it was for that type of development that is considered to be acceptable, then it would be considered.
Could you just elaborate on what that is?
I will have to refer to the neighbourhood plan.
I think it'd be useful for the committee just to know what the neighbourhood plan deems as acceptable.
1 second.
Yeah.
Development proposals to meet specialist housing and care needs on sites that are outside the settlement boundary will be permitted where it can be demonstrated that no available and deliverable site exists within the settlement boundary.
Okay. Thank you very much. Councillor Mayor, any follow-up at all?
No, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We had another hand up.
That was me, Chair. Yes, that was me, Chair. You mentioned that the site was isolated. Can you tell me where the nearest footpath is to this site?
There is no footpath into Thurston from this site. There's no footpath along that road at all.
Thank you, that's helpful.
Thank you very much. Any other questions for the parish council?
We've got Councillor John Matheson.
Okay. Councillor Matheson.
Did I hear Mr. West say that there were 6 types of development that were acceptable outside the settlement boundary? He mentioned 1.
No, not.
Did I mishear that?
No, I didn't say 6. I said there are several types of development that will be acceptable outside of the settlement boundary, and this is one of them.
Could you tell us the other ones that are acceptable? That's quite an interesting point.
Examples would be care needs, local employment needs, etc.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, any other questions for the parish council? Okay, thank you very much for joining us. Next up, we don't have an objector or a supporter that wishes to speak. So I'll now ask the applicant, Mr. James Platt, to speak. You have 3 minutes to address the committee. John, what are we?
I don't know if members would find it helpful. That's the extractor policy 1. I can put that up or go back to the presentation.
Yeah, no, you can leave that up while, but we'll go over now to Mr. James Platt, who has up to 3 minutes to speak. Over to you.
Great, thank you. Good morning, members. The policy position has been set out by your officers in the accompanying report. I'll therefore focus my attention to the general planning merits of the scheme. Whilst the site is located in the countryside, it is, however, in close proximity to Thurston village and the range of services and facilities located there. Given the distance of travel to the village, journeys by cycle remain a realistic prospect for future occupiers. Furthermore, a bus service is also in operation on Norton Road, providing an opportunity to utilise public transport. The site in this regard is considered to be a sustainable location, a view held by both the Council and Planning Inspectorate in the determination of other housing proposals within the vicinity. The application relates to a parcel of developed land set within the wider nursery. The site is subject to a former cafe building and areas of hard standing previously used as a car park and for growing and display of associated goods. In recent years, the business income has transitioned from on-site custom to primarily internet-based sales. To adjust to market demand, the business has adapted and phased out elements of the operation, whereby sales are now by mail order only. In light of the changes that have occurred, the application site is now a redundant part of the nursery and has no real prospect of being brought back into use. In this regard, the proposal represents an opportunity to make effective use of the site through the demolition and clearance of existing development and the provision of a well-designed property that is in keeping with the character and appearance of the area. In visual terms, the development is to be to the betterment of the site and its surroundings. Assessing the wider benefits of the proposal, the contribution of an additional dwelling toward housing supply in the district is obvious and undeniable. Economic benefits through the construction phase and support of local business will also be accrued. Beyond this, through the provision of landscaping and appropriate measures, the proposal presents an opportunity to enhance both the ecological and arboricultural significance of the site, something the applicant is committed to. Whilst the comments from Thurston Parish Council and residents are noted, it is highlighted that no objections have been received from remaining consultees, including on those matters of ecology, highway safety and land contamination. Considering the proposal in the round, as identified by your officers in the accompanying report, the proposal is a sustainable form of development whereby the adverse impacts do not significantly and demonstrably outweigh the benefits. We respectfully ask members to approve this application in accordance with the officer's recommendation. Thanks for the opportunity to speak and support this application.
Thank you very much. Do we have any questions for the applicant? Any hands up, Robert?
I can't see any, Chair.
No?
Oh,
Okay.
no, Councillor Stringer's just put his hand up.
Councillor Stringer, over to you.
Yeah, thank you for that. You mentioned it's on a bus route. How far away is it from a bus stop?
If you just bear with me, I'll double check. So the nearest route is on Norton Road. I'm just referring to the planning statement.
John, is that map going to help us?
So I approximate the site is within 150 metres of the site. It's on Norton Road, and the service that runs from it is the 385.
Okay, so can you just show us on that map before us, John, where we're talking about? So,
bear with me. Hang on. I'll bring them up. I've got them here updated.
Sorry, Chair. If it would help, I just would. It's directed towards the Oak Road, which is the first sort of intersecting highway along Norton Road, which is the main road. There's a collection of buildings that.
Yeah. Okay.
Got it.
Yeah. Sorry, I just needed to double check they were definitely operational as well. Bear with me if I go back to the presentation. So essentially, they're just here, aren't they? Next to the Oak Road that goes off. So can you?
The bottom left-hand corner where it says Baber and Mid Suffolk, you can see the mouse there. Okay. Thank you very much. Okay. Any other questions, Councillor Stringer? No. Okay.
No.
Anyone else? Robert, have their hand up, please.
We've got Councillor Sarah Mansell.
Yep, Councillor Mansell.
Yes, thank you. I was just going to add to the bus information because I too was looking it up. That the bus stop, there are 3 buses a day to Bury St Edmunds and 3 buses a day to Stowmarket from that bus stop.
Okay, thank you for that. Okay, no other questions for the applicant or agent? Okay, thank you for joining us. Now we have representations from the ward members. Now in my speaking notes, it says that members already have them in the papers. I would like, we always traditionally read them out.
I haven't got them in the paper.
Oh, right. No, well, fine. I've got. I think they're in the late papers that you received an email with the late papers. But what I would like to do is read them out. We always read them out in the council chamber, and I don't think this is any different. So I know it will take a bit of time, but I think it's important that we hear from the ward members. So unless I'm breaching any code,
No,
I'm not. Okay, thank you. So I'll do it in alphabetical order. First one is from Councillor Harry Richardson. Dear all, unfortunately, I'm unable to attend development. Can I just ask people to put their mics on mute? I can hear some background noise. Thanks. I'm not able to attend Development Control Committee meeting on Wednesday, in which case could I submit the attached as way of comment as a ward member, and as well as sending my apologies. In lieu of not being able to attend this committee meeting in person, I'd like to submit the following written representations in opposition to this planning application. This site is outside of the existing settlement boundary and is isolated from the rest of Thurston proper. This not only contradicts the established policy within Thurston's neighbourhood development plan, which emphasises development within the existing village, it is also, in my view, fails to align with the key principles of the National Planning Policy Framework. Firstly, as this site sits so far beyond the village of Thurston and any amenities or transport links, this development surely fails the test of environmental sustainability set out in the NPPF. There are no practical means of public transport available and no public footpaths or pedestrian access to the main village, and so a dependence on cars to travel to and from this site is an inevitability. As a result of the NPPF's policy of minimising waste and pollution and mitigating and adapting to climate change, including moving to a low-carbon economy, is directly contradicted. Similarly, as a single dwelling with no associated affordable housing or tangible economic benefit, there is little wider advantage offered to the district as a whole. There is little evidence of any plausible improvement to the local community, which is another measure of social sustainability in the NPPF. And given the large developments already approved in Thurston, there will be negligible improvement to the economic sustainability of the local area. Furthermore, I hope the committee will take into consideration the previous refusals relating to this site, specifically applications DC 18-00143 and DC 18-02262, as well as the rejected appeal AP 18-00250, which should weigh against this development when considered against its supposed benefits. For this reason, I hope the committee will agree with the comments made by the Parish Council, by Councillor Turner and myself, and refuse this planning permission for this development. And that's from Councillor Harry Richardson. Next, from Councillor Wendy Turner, who is the other ward member. As I'm not able to attend this committee meeting, I'd like to submit this letter in opposition to the planning application cited. Please accept my apologies for my absence. I called this application to committee because the proposed development falls outside the built-up area boundary and beyond the settlement boundary, as defined in the Thurston Neighbourhood Development Plan. The NDP states that new development in Thurston Parish shall be focused within the settlement boundary of Thurston. This is particularly relevant as Thurston has 1,200 planning permissions already granted, with the majority of them in the core of the village. There is minimal public transport available, and the proposed development is situated on a winding road with no pedestrian or cycleways into the centre of the village. Therefore, this application runs contrary to the NPPF Section 9, Promoting Sustainable Transport, point 103, states, development should be focused on locations which are or can be made sustainable through limiting the need to travel. As a resident of Thurston, I can assure the committee that this road is unsuitable for walking and cycling due to it being narrow and winding and there are no streetlights. This makes the likelihood of residents walking or cycling to the centre of the village even less likely, and in consequence, transport will be by private vehicle, directly contradicting the NPPF's policy of moving to a low-carbon economy. Precedent for refusal of this development has been set up by the refusal of planning applications DC 19-05113 for the reasons cited in asking for refusal for this application. Mid-Suffolk District Council, as local planning authority, hereby give notice that planning permission has been refused for the development proposed in the application in accordance with the particulars and plans listed in Section A for the following reasons. 1. The application site is located within the countryside outside the defined settlement boundary of Thurston, where new housing is restricted in accordance with the provisions of the Policy H7 of the local plan, the National Planning Policy Framework, and the Thurston Neighbourhood Plan. The proposed development does not accord with the policies of these documents in that the proposed dwellings would not constitute one of the exceptions to the restrictions on new housing in the countryside, as detailed in Policy H10 of the local plan, or paragraph 78 and 79 of the framework. Accordingly, the provision of the two dwellings in the countryside locations where, in the interest of protecting the existing intrinsic character of the countryside, there is strict control over new housing. There's strict control over new housing proposals and in a location away from essential facilities which would involve reliance on the private motor car, is therefore contrary to sustainability objectives of Policy FC1 and FC 1.1 of the Mid-Suffolk Core Strategy Focused Review December 2012, and the framework, paragraph 7, 8, 11, 78 and 79. On this basis, the development should be contrary to policies GP1, H7 and H15 of the Mid-Suffolk Local Plan 1998 and policy CS1, CS2 and CS5 of the Mid-Suffolk LDF Core Strategy 2008, the Thurston Neighbourhood Plan and the National Planning Policy Framework. Thurston has a need for affordable housing and not more large executive homes on the outskirts of the village. I would urge the committee to give full consideration to these reasons, to be consistent in giving the NDP due weight and to refuse this application. There has in the late papers also been submitted a more detailed members referral form, which has been submitted. So that's it from the two local members who have both sent their apologies and can't be here today. Okay, members, so you've had all the details put before you. You've heard from the parish council, you've heard from the applicant, you've heard from the ward members, you've also had the late papers. It's now open up for debate. Obviously, we'll go through, let's all each go through having the opportunity to speak. Then once we've been all round the room, then we'll have the opportunity to hear from a proposal and take that forward. So
excuse me, Chair, yes. I have a question. I have my hand up. It's quite frustrating if you can't see the hand, and that's the way we're meant to be communicating with you. I just had a question that had arisen whilst you were reading out the comments from the ward members.
I would have finished those off before taking the question anyway, so that's fine. So your question, please. I just wanted to get the question in before we started the debate. Yes, go for it. I just have a question that is really for the planning officer, but it's just brought to mind whilst you were commenting, whilst you're reading out those comments, and that is the application on the other side of the road at Navarack, which looked like it was for 3 or 4 dwellings. Could the planning officer just tell me the date that outline permission was granted?
Bear with me, I thought I put the date on there. 2019. It was October 2019, I thought.
October 2019. Okay, thank you. Any other questions, Councillor Mansell?
Sorry, can I just come back? Yeah, it is important because the neighbourhood plan, the Thurston neighbourhood plan, was adopted on the 24th of October 2019. So what I really want to know is whether that approval was before or after the adoption of the Thurston neighbourhood plan.
Fine, we'll just check.
Can you give me 5? I'm gonna have to go out of the presentation and I'll come back.
Yeah.
I can't.
It's an important point. So we'd like
2 seconds. I'll come back out to you. And come back to you in a moment.
Okay.
Sorry, Chair, I appreciate this is not normally where the agent can contribute, but I do have the date of that decision in front of me.
Okay, yeah, we're happy to, yeah.
Yeah, so the decision was issued on the 20th of December 2019, so it was post adoption of the neighbourhood plan. That was, sorry, and to clarify, that was for one dwelling. Those applications there were separate applications on that site.
Okay, John, I think what we need to do, if there were separate applications, can we just have the various dates then, if it's more complex than just one application?
Yeah, bear with me. I will grab that for you. Sorry, I've got a very slow system here. It might take me a few minutes. Can I come back to you if you want to continue, and I'll come back to you very shortly.
Yep. Any other questions from other members? No, I think, John, we'll have to wait for this because we need it before we go into debate, I think. I don't think we should start the debate till we've got all that information.
Sure.
Chair, would it be an appropriate time to take an adjournment then, just until Mr. Payment-G has found that?
Yeah, do you think it's going to take that long, John? That's a yes.
Take 5 minutes.
Sorry,
Okay.
I'm currently, I've just got to wade through 72.
Okay.
I need to wade through 72 applications to find the date, so bear with me.
Excuse me, sorry, Chair, sorry. I do have those dates in front of me, but I don't want to sort of, I appreciate that.
I think we'll leave John to dig them out. I think that'd be better.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay, what we'll do is we'll start again the meeting and we'll adjourn it and we'll start again at 10:40.
Chair, it's frustrating. I've got my hand up and
okay.
It's relevant to this. The actual date they're approved might be irrelevant if they were, for instance, a committee decision and the actual approval came 6 months after the decision was made by the committee.
I agree. And that's why we need John to look up all the information.
That
exactly. That's why we need to go John to dig it up rather than just take it from the agent, just to be 100% certain. I agree. Okay, so we'll just have a quick break, let John dig out the information, start again at 10:40.
Yes, Chair. Yeah, I'm not sure about that. The only thing I could possibly suggest is signing out of teams and sort of going out and coming back in again. But it's not something we've come across. I'll report it to IT. No, and it's only the only thing I could possibly think is another option could be possibly the connection. If your connection doesn't seem to be too bad though, Chair, from what I can hear. Yeah, so it might be a possible glitch, but I'll report it and see what the IT team come back with, see if they're aware of any other instances of it. But for the moment, if you're happy to continue as it is, Chair, I'll just relay.
We'll now continue, and can I hand back to John Pateman-G? So could you just run through for us, the question was regarding the application for the site, the dates, and I think as Councillor Stringer pointed out, we need the wider detail on the dates in terms of whether it went to committee, etc. So could you just run through those, please?
So we're dealing with the land on the opposite side of the site.
Just put up the relevant. Could you just go back to screen the slide 6, because I think that helps us. Thank you.
Okay, so the first one which was approved, it was a delegated decision, was 19/2224 for 2 dwellings, and that was approved, delegated on the 20th of June 2019. So in respect of the 2 in the front. We then had a further one come forward on the 23rd of September 2019. Again, a delegated decision, that was approval. So therefore we get 3. And then the final one, which is just around the corner, which is the approval for, again, a further dwelling outline, then a delegated decision again, and that was approved on the 20th of December 2019. So essentially you have 1 after the neighbourhood plan and you have 3 before the neighbourhood plan.
Thank you. Anyone have any questions on that? No. Okay. So members, any other questions anyone wants to bring up? Nope. Okay. So we'll go into debate. Happy to open it up to the floor. We can go through the names alphabetically if people want to, or we can just do it by hand. I'm very happy to do it by hand. Robert, you'll have to call each person out, please, in order. Who would like to start?
So we've got Councillor Haddingham, then Councillor Muller.
Okay, Councillor Haddingham first.
Thank you. I'd like to say I'm torn, but I'm not really. I hate anything that goes against the.
Could I just ask that you turn your cameras on when you speak? I think that'd be useful. Thank you.
Okay. So yeah, I really don't like this. It goes against the neighbourhood plan, which we've all been encouraging our parishes to complete, and to go against it within a year is a real kick in the teeth. And I think with next door, their appeal being refused because of rural character, nothing looks like it's been approved this side of the road. And I think the parish councillor had a point when he said they could easily just go for 2 more houses there as soon as this is approved. Anyway, I don't really like it at all, and that's my opinion.
Thank you. Who's next, please, Robert?
Councillor Muller.
Councillor Muller.
Thank you, Chair. Really, I just really wanted to sort of mention what's mentioned on papers on page 86, paragraphs 4.1 and 4.2 relating to a previous appeal, where the appeal said, I conclude that the location would not be unsuitable for the proposed development with regard to whether occupants of the proposed dwellings would have adequate access to services and facilities with an undue reliance on private vehicle use. And 4.2, having regard to the inspector's findings and noting the application process as single dwelling rather than 2 is considered on appeal, it is concluded that the site represents a sustainable location for the housing density sought. But also on page 88, paragraph 10.1, under social and economic benefits, this said the scheme contributes specifically toward housing need in Thurston, noting that 4-bedroom bungalows are identified as one of the housing need types listed at paragraph 5.22 of the supporting policy text in the Thurston neighbourhood plan. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for that. And next up is
Councillor Matheson, then Councillor Mansell.
Thank you.
Oh, we want the video on as well. Yes. Yeah, I'm just looking at what Councillor May has just referred to. I did seem to gather during the presentation when Mr. Pateman-G was talking about the various appeal decisions and so on, that he emphasised that in the appeal, the sustainability was discussed as being not very satisfactory, but that it wasn't used as a reason for appeal. And I mean, if you think about how we balance the various factors in reaching decisions, we frequently take into consideration quite a number of more pros and cons than we necessarily decide are strong enough to use and state as the reason or reasons for refusal, with one eye on defending appeals inevitably. And I'm a bit uncomfortable with the idea that an inspector failing to use lack of sustainability as a reason for refusal is not the same thing as an inspector accepting that the site is adequately sustainable. That's not the same thing in my mind. So I think I've got a bit of a problem with that, and I think the chronology point that I made about the presentation has actually rather come home to roost rather quickly. And I'm not clear. There's several different appeal decisions that we've got in all of this, so I'm actually finding sorting that all out a little difficult at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Matheson. Next up, Robert.
Councillor Mansell, then Councillor Field.
Councillor Mansell.
Thank you. I mean, I am finding this quite a difficult decision to make because it is sort of effectively on a piece of used land. It's not like a field in the countryside. It is currently got a business on it. I regret the loss of the business on the site because it did form some employment in the area. And I also have my doubts about the real sustainability of this particular part of Thurston. And I find that the applications on the other side of the road, it's interesting that 3 of them were made before the neighbourhood plan was adopted. And then there was a 4th one that was made subsequently. 3 buses a day along that road is not really a usable service for people to get to work. And the map that the planning officer showed us gave us some distance to the edge of the settlement boundary, not to where the services are in Thurston. So it's probably over 2 kilometres for people to get from this dwelling to the railway station, where they perhaps could use some sustainable transport to get to and from work. So, it isn't really that sustainable a location. It is, one house, and how much benefit is Thurston going to get from one more house here when they've got over 1,000 that are already being built or about to be built within the centre of the village? So I think it is a very difficult decision to make. I don't particularly like it, but I'm struggling to find reasons that are going to stand up for refusing it, because if this adjacent field, the inspector thought it was just about sustainable, then it does make it more difficult to argue that this is. I mean, personally, I don't think it is sustainable, but there seem to be a number of houses that are being built around there which have got permission, and it's certainly not an isolated area. There are lots of dwellings around there, but being honest, everyone who lives there is going to rely on the motor vehicle, and we should really be discouraging that. It's just that we don't really have planning policy strong enough to argue that point.
Thank you for that. Next up was Councillor Field.
Thank you. Yes, I do find a significant consideration here is that we do have a neighbourhood plan, that we encourage parishes to produce those because we think they have significant value and they carry a lot of weight. So ignoring the neighbourhood plan seems to me to be a problem. There have been various comments about issues like the size of the house, suggestion that it actually does match the neighbourhood plan's analysis of need, and my own feeling that says actually to keep communities sustainable, you need a whole variety of house sizes. You need those for the lowest paid workers and those for the highest paid workers. So we should be rather careful about engaging our biases when we're making those decisions. I guess I am concerned also about the claim that the tilted balance is engaged. There are circumstances where it is. but we do seem to grasp that as a tool to get applications approved. And I feel that in this case there is sufficient evidence that we have a 5-year land supply, we have a neighbourhood plan. There are various things that implies that it shouldn't be considered. The sustainability issues obviously are significant. You might argue at the moment that people are just as likely to use something like Teams to communicate, to work. That doesn't engage your private car, and your private car in the future could be electric. So that's, to me, a somewhat weaker argument. I think at the moment I'll listen to the rest of the arguments, but my feeling is that the neighbourhood plan one is the most important one. The community has expressed its views. They're legally expressed. They have been approved, and we should give them very great weight. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Robert, who's next, please?
We have Councillor Richard Mayer.
Okay.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to thank Councillor Muller for just pointing out that paragraph 10.1. The Thurston neighbourhood plan has identified large bungalows as one of the types of houses they need. They've got 1,200 houses being built. I'd imagine most of those are 2-3 bedroom houses. What we have here is going to be a derelict piece of land. But I think whilst the neighbourhood plan may prevent or request that nothing be built outside the settlement boundaries, I think this is an exception. I think this is justification. Indeed, I think it was Councillor Ward spoke about a special need. Well, this is a special need. We don't need many 4-bedroom bungalows. I dare say not many are being built. It's a special need in probably a sensible position, in that those occupying a house of this nature will have the necessary transport. And of course, with the cafe closing, the amount of traffic is going to be reduced. So that in itself is a benefit. So whilst I'm a big supporter of neighbourhood plans, I think actually you can argue that this falls within the neighbourhood plan, and that this is a housing type that justifies development outside a settlement boundary. So I'm minded to approve.
Can I just check? Is that are you proposing approval, or are you just minded to approve?
Well, at the moment we're discussing, but yes, I'll be happy to propose at a later date if you wish.
Okay. So I'll take that as a proposal to approve, but we'll keep going round at this stage. Okay. Who's next, please, Robert?
Councillor John Matheson.
Okay. Councillor Matheson.
Thank you, Chair. I think Councillor Field very clearly expressed one of the 2 points that I wanted to make when he spoke about the tilted balance being engaged rather too readily, frequently, etc. And particularly in this context where we've got a neighbourhood plan not recently adopted. The other point that I think we talking about the existing use. This is in effect a change of use application from employment to residential, and I'm just looking at the plan where there appear to be polytunnels and so on behind this site, as to whether an employment use moving into horticulture and the production of local food might be a viable future use of this site, rather than turning it over to residential, which has been pointed out. There's 1,000 or 1,200 more to come already. So I think those points are not encouraging me to support this application, and clearly I also agree with Councillor Hanningham that the principle of neighbourhood plans does need to be defended by this committee where we have the opportunity to do so. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Who's next, please, Robert?
We don't have anyone else at the moment, Chair.
Well, so far at this stage, we have a proposer, but no seconder. Anyone else wish to come in?
Sorry, Chair.
Stringer.
Sorry, Chair. I thought you were going through everyone to hear their views and then ask for a proposal.
Yeah, but all
No,
we've
you're
had
not.
so well, no, because no one else had their hand up for a view. If you would like to come in,
I thought you were going through everyone in order. Sorry.
no, we've
That's
done it
what
by
you
hands
said
up.
you were doing.
I said
okay.
I had the option of doing that, or just by
Okay.
hands up. We went with hands up. So over to you
Oh, right.
to
I wasn't
comment.
aware you were doing it. Okay. Just give me a second. Thank you, Chair. Why is that not blurring that? There you go. No, not that. Hang on just a second. That's better. Right. Yes, just want to. I think this one is a difficult
Councillor
one.
Stringer, can I just come in? Because, just sorry to interrupt, but it has been pointed out to me. Obviously, you've come in. The reason it says Suffolk County Councillor next to your name is because you're using a County Council laptop.
Device. Absolutely.
But you are here as a substitute only, as a
I am,
district councillor. Thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah, fine. It's just the Mid-Suffolk supplied equipment doesn't work. Anyway, this one is a relatively difficult one because obviously trying to encourage single-storey dwellings in a rural area is something that we wish to do because there are certain people that need single-storey dwellings. Having said that, you need the right homes in the right places, and I think what we're discussing today is whether this is the right home in the right place. And also, I think it's a matter of sort of planning policy, and this is quite a pivotal decision, I think, today about how we go forward. I have to say, I still really struggle with this policy idea that you have to include an out-of-date policy in your thinking, and because that policy is out of date, you trigger a tilted balance decision when you have two perfectly good policies that are up to date that should guide you with this because they have the greatest weight. And the greatest weight is the National Planning Policy Framework and the Neighbourhood Plan. And if you bolt those two documents together because they coalesce, it helps you get to a decision on this application. And the decision I come to with this application is it should be refused because the Neighbourhood Plan says we should like all of our housing within a particular settlement boundary, which is fine, and a mix of housing within that settlement boundary. If within that mix we cannot adequately get sufficient needs for special needs that do arise, then we would look outside of that in those unique circumstances. The National Planning Policy Framework, was argued by the officer, does not restrict development to inside the settlement boundary. Quite true. Paragraph 79 lists all of the reasons and the circumstances that you could approve something outside of the settlement boundary. And that is the essential need of a rural worker, would make optimal viable use of a heritage asset, would reuse a redundant farm building, or would include the subdivision of an existing residential dwelling, or if the design is such exceptional quality that is truly outstanding with highest environmental standards. None of those paragraphs apply to this one. So actually, I determine that this application is contrary to the Neighbourhood Plan as adopted, and it's also contrary to the National Planning Policy Framework, paragraph 79. If you do invoke a tilted balance, then there is some policies that would support this, but frankly, I think to use that argument in this case is wrong.
Thanks, Councillor Stringer, for that. Okay, looking around the room, I believe everyone has spoken except myself. I think all councillors have now spoken. I also, I'm afraid, I'm not supportive of this. I think it's a close run thing. I hear what Councillor Stringer says. To me, it's about giving weight to the neighbourhood plan over everything else, and where do we rank it, and how do we, where does that sit in the decision-making process? Also, I think it's about protection of the rural character. The houses that we've seen are on the other side of the road. To me, it just sits uncomfortably when we've asked the parish to do so much work and to come forward with the neighbourhood plan. I think it just doesn't quite get it over the line for me. It's a very difficult one. It's a close run thing. My view is, though, this doesn't quite fit for me and doesn't sit comfortably. So that's everyone who wished to speak. Do we have any other hands up of anyone else that wishes to speak?
We did have Chair Mr. Pateman G and then Councillor Mansell, and just to, whilst I have the floor as such, we do have a proposal, but we don't have a second.
Exactly, that is correct at the moment. Okay, so John Pateman G, you wanted to come in, and then we'll go to Councillor Mansell.
If I may just have a moment, it's just referring back to paragraph, just very quickly, referring back to paragraph 79, planning policies and decisions should avoid the development of isolated homes. The problem here is that phrase, isolated homes, and it's fairly established that this would be a site that wouldn't result in an isolated home. And of course, this phrase has been turned on its head and used at appeal in the last couple of years to seek single houses in the countryside, and has been used successfully to do so. So it isn't just the criteria that is listed within paragraph 79, but it is that first phrase that we need to be wary of if we were to hold a refusal for a non-isolated property just on that phrase alone. I do understand that this is a difficult one. It has been a difficult one for officers, if I can volunteer that, because there is such a different balance to undertake here. We are within the remit of a neighbourhood plan, which we give significant weight to, but we are also in amongst a whole load of appeals, and those appeals are not consistent because they are both allowing development in this area and also refusing development in this area. And we've picked through those to come to the on balance recommendation before members. So it is a debate, and it is all down to what weight members give elements. My only encouragement would be that members should, if they are looking against the development, then we need to be careful about what basis that is being based on. My suggestion would be is to try to clearly identify harm in respect of the proposal, because that would be a stronger position to take if that position was taken. Many thanks.
Thank you. Okay, so Councillor Mansell.
Thank you, Chair. I too was actually going to come in on a similar comment to what John Pateman G has just mentioned, that it does say in paragraph 79, it does refer to isolated dwellings. And as I said earlier, I can't call this an isolated dwelling. There are a number of other dwellings in very close proximity. However, when I look at paragraph 78 of the NPPF, it does say that to promote sustainable development in rural areas. Now, I think we can argue that this is a rural area, even if it's not isolated, and maybe the NPPF is not clear because it talks about rural in one paragraph and isolation in the next. But anyway, rural housing should be located where it will enhance or maintain vitality of rural communities. I don't think Thurston is in danger of I mean, it's got so many other dwellings. It doesn't. One more dwelling is not going to enhance the community of Thurston. So to me, it doesn't fit with 78. But I too have concerns about pinning it on paragraph 79, because I don't think by any stretch of the imagination we can call this an isolated dwelling. But I do think that I think we ought to be able to use Thurston neighbourhood plan policies, because they do say that they only want sort of exceptional dwellings to be outside of their settlement boundary, and maybe that is a better argument to use. I mean, I'm not an expert, but I would be concerned about pinning this on 79 when that talks about isolated dwellings.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, Robert, any other hands up at this stage?
Yep, we've got Councillor Field.
Councillor Field.
Yes, on the neighbourhood plan issue, having said I'm concerned about that, when John Pateman G put the document or paragraph from the document up, there were a set of criteria for defining the acceptability of developments outside the boundary. And one of those, I thought, concerned with bungalows with good characteristics, with acceptable environmental characteristics or whatever. I'm not sure whether that was the paragraph that Councillor Muller was referring to, but I wonder if we could return to the document and just look at that to see whether this development actually fits that set of criteria. Because rejecting on the basis of a plan that actually has a criteria that might accept the development would be somewhat worrying.
Yeah. Okay. Let's see. Can we put that up, John?
Yeah, in terms of, I don't think it's in that policy in terms of policy 1. I think what we're talking about is policy 2 in terms of meeting Thurston's needs. Might be worth, with respect, might be worth going through the various policies of Thurston's neighbourhood plan one by one, if it would help members.
Have you got them there?
Display those. Yeah, I can display
do
them. I can do that if that would be useful. Just give me a second to switch displays over, and then I can do that again. That one. So let's start from the top. Is that large enough for everybody? Yep.
That's good.
So that's policy 1 in terms of settlement policy. So we've got the reference to policy 2, which I'll come to in a moment, in terms of the needs of Thurston. And we've got design high quality buildings, retain rural character, and we have development proposals on specialist housing and care needs on site, and of course protection of agricultural land. If I then scroll down to policy 2, we are addressing the needs of the wider housing market as a rural economy. Well, it's there in front of you. I'm conscious I don't want to summarise this entirely in case I'm accused of being too brief with it, so I'll let members read.
If anyone wants to come in as these slides are going up, just feel free to come in if any members want to come in.
Do you want me to move on to the next policy?
Please.
That one through is a policy more on the design elements of a scheme, which you may wish to consider. Shall I move on?
Yeah.
Yeah, Abby. Okay. Community. This one doesn't really relate specifically to our proposal, as it's about community facilities, so I will move on from that one. Key movement routes, again, that might be something that in response to the site you may wish to consider further.
Okay.
Okay, and that's about highway capacity. I would suggest that it's not applicable in this case, although I appreciate one extra house does provide traffic. Parking provision, again, I would argue that there is plenty of parking provision in respect of this site, and its location doesn't affect drop-off for the primary school. And policy 9 refers to landscape and environmental features. Again, if we're talking about with rural aspects,
the impact that development must be designed to ensure that its impact on landscape and rural environment is minimised. About open countryside.
Okay, I think the paragraph I noticed was at the beginning of the document, and I probably misread it. So there was one sort of early things you showed.
I would suggest, I've gone through this a number of times before, that's pretty much where we are. We have light pollution at number 12, and we have wildlife number 11. But I think we've gone through the key ones.
Yeah. So can you just go back to John's point at the beginning, just so we're clear?
Yep,
John, do you want to come in?
Chair, I think it might be 5.22 that's relevant.
Okay.
It is 5.22. Yeah.
Hang on, let me find that. We're all in freeze here. Let's screw down a bit further quickly. 5.22.
That's in order of need.
Yeah. So there are certainly a number of things there defining bungalows as being needs that are not otherwise being met. But I thought the paragraphs that were referring to criteria for allowing out of settlement boundary development included something close to what we are looking at, but I believe that I may have misread that when we.
And the important thing about this is the order. So everything is listed here, and that is the order of need.
Sheltered, and then 2, 4, etc.
I think we've covered that off. Okay, thank you. Thank you, John. I think that was worth just running through, just to be absolutely clear. And that was the opening one. Thank you. Okay.
Do you want me to take that down?
Yeah. Thank you.
Yep.
Okay. Who else wants to come in? Anyone else?
So we've got
Robert,
Councillor Stringer, then Councillor Muller, then Councillor Mansell, and then Councillor Matheson.
Okay.
Yeah. If I may, it comes back to the that original question to the officers about which policy in the national planning policy framework then supports this application, because you're suggesting this isn't an isolated dwelling. Okay, I get that. So we don't use policy 79 then. So which one supports it? That's what I'm asking. Because when I read the other supported ones, it doesn't seem to.
Okay, let's just ask that, get that point clarified. John.
Right, okay. The essentially support is deemed by the opposite meaning of that first paragraph in terms of paragraph 79. So if isolated dwellings are not allowed, the opposite is then true, that non-isolated dwellings are, and that is what's been used as an argument. There are other aspects. The whole of the document, the whole of the NPPF has to also be taken as a whole. And it is a presumption of being in favour of development unless other material considerations say otherwise. So if this is causing harm to amenity, if it is causing harm to the environment, if it is causing harm to the rural character, if it is causing harm to highways, then that takes away the presumption of development. But the presumption is there, and of course I haven't got the NPPF ahead of me here, but in terms of the first few paragraphs, it's all about the presumption of growth. Planning is here for the presumption of growth. So what is stopping that? And that is what the NPPF as a whole is taken. I don't know if Ian wants to help me any further, because you were witness to the council advice as well in respect of other sites within Thurston, and whether any aspect of those could be helped in this case, but
Ian,
without going into it, but ultimately it is members' opinion of how much weight they give both the NPPF, the current local plan, or indeed the neighbourhood plan, and how they interpret those policies.
Okay.
Ian. Hello. Yes, I heard all of that, and there's not very much more I can say to that. I mean, the risk of prolonging things, if I go back absolutely to first principles, we all know, members of this committee very well know the statutory duty that applies, that you determine a planning application in accordance with a development plan unless material considerations indicate otherwise. I think perhaps we will just go back to that. And as I think it's been explained, and everyone has got the point, that the development plan is not one document. It shouldn't be seen as one document in contradiction to others. It is the policies as a whole, whether from the local plan and the neighbourhood plan where applicable, as it is here, as John says, bolted on. And then the NPPF is not part of the development plan. It is a material consideration. I think, having listened to Councillor Stringer, I mean, I think this it's Her Majesty's government's own fault because they've used this phrase out of date. But we've had it said in court numerous times in case law that it doesn't mean you totally ignore a policy. It means you attach less weight to it. It would have been better if they'd said attach less weight in the first place. And it's a matter for the decision maker on every occasion, though, of course, the NPPF is important government policy that we would risk being found perverse if we said we were actually going to attach very much less weight to it in this context. But I think, I don't think there's much more I can add to John's point. If you're so I mean, is there a specific question that?
No, I think that covers it off. I think we're covering repeated ground now, and I think the committee knows only too well of its responsibilities and how it needs to weigh up the various parts of the equation and give which part weight that's up to each individual member to make that decision today. So thank you. Okay, I am keen to. Okay, so we've got some more hands up, but can we not? I think we don't want to cover old ground. So who's next, please, Robert?
So we've got Councillor Muller, and then Councillor Manso, and then Councillor Matheson. Okay.
Councillor Muller first.
Thank you, Chair. I must admit, having seen paragraph 5.22, which lists 4-bedroom bungalows as fourth on the list out of approximately 6, I think that potentially could sway the way I was going to think on this particular case. And I think obviously the neighbourhood plan does have a considerable weight. So that was quite an interesting, and I thank John Pateman-G for actually showing that. It was very helpful. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Mansell.
Thank you. No, I too would like to thank John for pointing out all of the policies in the Thurston neighbourhood plan, because I think that policy 6A may well, to me, I don't think this application meets policy 6A because it says new developments must ensure safe pedestrian and cycle access to link up with existing pavements and cycle infrastructure. This development certainly does not do that. And I'd also like to go back to policy 1D of the Thurston neighbourhood plan, which says that it must meet development proposals outside the settlement boundary if they are to meet specialist housing and care needs. And now we've seen that list that was in paragraph 5.22. And as Councillor Muller's just pointed out, 4-bedroom bungalows were 4th or 5th on the list. Above 4-bedroom bungalows were 2- and 3-bedroom bungalows. So you could argue that it isn't that, they actually need smaller bungalows ahead of the larger bungalows. And if we then go back to policy 1D of the Thurston neighbourhood plan, it says that even if that was one of the requirements of the community, that they needed these 4-bedroom bungalows as specialist type of housing, it does say it should be demonstrated that there are no available and deliverable sites within the settlement boundary for those specialist needs. So I'm veering towards wanting to refuse this application on the grounds of Thurston Neighbourhood Plan 1D and 6A. But I'd just like to listen to see what anyone else has got to say.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Matheson. And then I'm going to just go back to Councillor Mayer.
Thank you. Yes, 522 also, much of that has been said. The only other point about 522 in the neighbourhood plan is that people that want bungalows probably would particularly want to be near the services, not a mile away from them. So I think, yes, agreeing with several people already that the idea that it's a meeting housing need because it's on that list, having seen where it is on that list, just above extra large houses or something, really doesn't carry any weight at all.
Thank you, John. Thank you, Councillor Matheson. Any other hands up before I just go back? Robert, any other hands up? No?
No, Chair.
Okay, so at the moment, we've had Councillor Mayer who says he's happy to propose the officer's recommendation. Councillor Mayer, over to you. Where are you at and what do you want to do? Do you want to stay with that and take it forward or not? You're over to you.
Yeah, it's very difficult. Can I honestly put forward that a 4-bedroom bungalow, because it's number 4 on a list of 6, is sufficient weight to overturn other parts of the neighbourhood plan? I think on reflection, the answer is no. So no, I'd like to withdraw the motion.
Okay. So at the moment, we have no proposal standing, and we didn't get a seconder, which is why we're not voting on it. Do we have any other proposals that anyone would like to bring forward?
We have Councillor Stringer has got his hand up and Councillor Muller.
Okay, Councillor Stringer, then Councillor Muller.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I think now, having sort of read some more of the MPPF as well, because that is sort of the overarching direction of government, and paragraphs like paragraph 78 sets out that we should promote sustainable development, not just development, sustainable development in rural areas. Housing should be located where it will enhance and maintain the vitality of rural communities. This site could be argued, well, it's relatively close to a bus stop with a minimal service. Would that enhance the use of that facility? Well, it would enhance it an awful lot more if it were in the clearly defined settlement boundary in an adopted neighbourhood plan. And where it doesn't fulfil the needs of specialist groups to be where it is, or serve a business or one of the other needs, I think we're on slightly dangerous ground without case law actually on the particular site we're talking about. I know we've got some case law around it, but I think on balance, I would certainly recommend refusal, basing it on Thurston's neighbourhood plan, that paragraph 6, certainly A and B, I felt that it was in complete contravention of, and also its overarching policy about where settlements should be. I have some sympathy with what is potentially a brownfield site, but then if we've got a brownfield site, it'd be nice to see the whole site come forward. Or if there was a dwelling here that was linked to the business use that's there, a worker needed to be there to facilitate that business, I would have more sympathy. But at the moment, on balance, I certainly would recommend refusing, and I propose refusal on the basis of the neighbourhood plan, Thurston neighbourhood plan, certainly policy 6 A and B, and on the National Plan and Policy Framework, paragraph 78. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. We have had other points raised. I think policy 9, I've written down 5.22 and 1D.
Yeah.
But maybe we'll come on to those, see where we go, and whether you want to tie them in as well. Yeah,
happy with that, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Do we have a seconder, please?
I'm happy to second, Chair. Councillor Muller.
Okay, Councillor Muller. Now, John Pateman G, just before I open it up to others, we have also talked about policy 9, protecting the rural environment. No, policy 9 was protect. I can't read my own writing. Protect rural character. Sorry, character. And we've also had policy 6A and 5.22 also mentioned. On the grounds of what you've heard from Councillor Stringer and others can you just run through before we go to vote possible reasons for refusal, just to clarify them for us, please?
We've gone quite a few different places in policy, and it might be just worth wrapping those up a little bit.
Please.
Can I start with let's start with policy. Let's NPPF. Sorry, everything's an N. Sorry, the neighbourhood plan. First, the neighbourhood plan, policy 1. Okay, so the emphasis of policy 1 that is that development should be focused within the settlement boundary. Well, this is in contrary to that this is not a site within the settlement boundary. So you can, reasonably say that it's not in accord entirely with that, especially with the other aspects that we're going to talk about. 1D, though, has been mentioned. Development proposals to meet specialist housing and care needs on sites that are outside. Well, arguably, a 4-bedroom bungalow is not a specialist housing need or a care need, because there's no definition of what a specialist housing and care need is in relation to this policy. There is no glossary to this, and it doesn't get picked up in any other way. So I'm a bit concerned that we're trying to essentially provide a criteria of what is a specialist housing and care need to meet this policy, or not meet it, as the case may be. So I'm not convinced that would be a suitable way forward.
Let's keep going through all the various policies, and then it's up to Councillor String and Councillor Muller to see if they agree with that.
Yeah, moving on to policy 6A. Certainly, if members are mindful that this is not a, sorry, I'm just trying to scroll to the right policy. So this is obviously talking about key movement routes, and new development must ensure safe pedestrian and cycle access to link up with existing pavements. Well, that is not being proposed here. So clearly, it is contrary to that element of policy 6. So 6A, it would be a clear contrary matter. So I can understand that going forward. 6AB talks about the enhancement of the key movement route. I need to check if this is actually a key movement route. Pages 75 and 76. Bear with me. 75, 75, 75. Oh, yeah, it is. So, okay. So it's the blue line on page 75 of the neighbourhood plan, and we have a key movement route which identifies policy 6, and that is the main road in front of this site. So going back to policy 6B, forgive me for having to do this incrementally. This obviously says there shall be a contribution, although I don't believe any such contribution fund has ever been set up. It also says not have a detrimental impact on the key movement route. So ultimately, we're saying that the flow of pedestrians and cyclists from this development of one house might have a detrimental impact on that movement route, possibly because there is no facilities along that part of the route for safe flow of pedestrians and cyclists. So on that basis, I would say that policies 6A and B are applicable in that context. Right, good. So that leads me on to policy 9, I would suggest, which is a clear statement in respect of development must be designed to ensure that its impact on the landscape and high quality rural environment of Thurston is minimised. You're saying that this development does not minimise the harm on the rural environment and out of character perhaps. So on that basis, that would perhaps pick up on the adjacent appeal that had the same mind in terms of rural character. And I think that would cover the neighbourhood plan. Then I would probably suggest members consider that obviously beyond the neighbourhood plan, we still have our, be it out-of-date policies in respect of the development plan of the local plan, core strategy and focus review. And as much as you may not be able to give them as much weight as we'd like, we can give them some weight. And I would suggest that policies H7, CS1, CS2, CS5, which talks about environment and rural environment, FC1 and FC1.1 of the focus review are still applicable and may be wished to be taken forward as well. Does that help, or do you want me to summarise that into some sort of wording?
Councillor Stringer and Councillor Muller, as the proposer and seconder for refusal, have those covered all the points that you wish to raise?
Yes, I think they have, Chair. And there was no comment about quoting anything from the NPPF in this.
Oh, yes.
I think we should at least quote one of the paragraphs where this is in clear conflict with.
Yeah, so if I may come in on that one, Chairman, if I may, paragraph 78, well, you are making a judgment. You know, if you feel that the location and siting design, of the proposal fails, given the location to enhance or maintain the viability of the rural communities, or fails to demonstrate this, then being contrary to paragraph 78 is your position going forward.
Okay, so Councillor Stringer, you've heard the reasons for refusal that have been read out and the various policy numbers, and Councillor Muller, are you content that that is the reasons that we should vote, upon which we should vote?
Yeah, I'm content, Chair.
Okay, and Councillor Muller?
Yes, I'm also content, thank you, Chair.
Before we go to a vote, does anyone else wish to speak?
There's no one else there, Chair.
Okay, so we will now go to a vote, and I will now hand over to Robert Carmichael to take us through that.
Thank you, Chair. So if you could please respond with for, against or abstain. Councillor John Field.
For.
We're voting for refusal.
Yes, for.
Councillor Lavinia Haddingham.
For.
Councillor Matthew Hicks.
For.
Councillor Sarah Mansell.
For.
Councillor John Matheson.
For.
Councillor Richard Mayer.
Abstain.
Councillor David Muller.
Councillor Muller, are you there?
Sorry. For.
Thank you, Councillor. And Councillor Stringer.
For.
Could you read out the
Thank you.
results?
That is carried by 7 votes to 0 with 1 abstention. Mr. Dupre, do you confirm?
Yes, I agree, Mr. Carmichael. 7 votes in favour and 1 abstention.
Okay, so the application is refused. Thank you very much, members. So we now move on to the next application. Councillor Haddingham will now take the chair, and as the ward member, I obviously will not be able to vote on the next application. Over to you, Councillor Haddingham.
Thank you. Can I suggest a comfort break for 5 minutes? And so if
happy with that.
Okay, cool. So if we come back at say 11:40.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
we're moving on in the agenda to item 7A, DC 20-01717, land east of Abbey Hill, Hoxne, Suffolk. And I will now ask the governance officer to conduct a roll call to confirm all members have returned after the break.
Thank you, Chair. So, Councillor John Field.
Present.
Councillor Haddingham.
Present.
Councillor Hicks.
Present.
Councillor Mansell.
Present.
Councillor Matheson. Present. Councillor Mayer.
Present.
Councillor Muller.
Present.
And Councillor Stringer.
Present and occasionally correct.
We're all here, Chair.
Good, thank you. I now invite Case Officer Jamie Edwards to introduce the application to the committee. Jamie, you're on mute.
Yeah, turned it off. There you go. Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you very much, members. Yeah, I'll take you through this application. We're at land east of Abbey Hill, Hoxne. I'll just share the presentation now, so if you just bear with me 1 second while we wait for that to come up. You should all see that on your screens now. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. We've got it on our screen.
Excellent stuff. Perfect. Thank you. Okay, so we are looking at the Hoxne area up at the north part of the district. This is a reserve matters application. So we are looking here at access, appearance, landscaping, layout and scale. Just a bit of history and context on the site. The outline application was granted in August 2017 under that following reference number that you'll see on screen. The monument, which will become clear in a second as I go through the slides, is located to the east of the site and was listed after the outline permission was granted, and that was listed about 16 months after in December 2018. So whilst this change is a material consideration in the Reserve Matters application, it does not void the outline application permission in the first place. So we'll go through the details of the context of the site in further detail now. Starting off with an aerial map, and we will zoom out so you can see this in the setting, but this is the site plan, the site area. We've got some residential development to the south. We have 2 residential dwellings to the west, and you can just see there the white dot, which I'll just put my cursor over the top to clearly identify, is the monument. Hoxne is split into 2 distinct areas. We have the northern part to the top here. We have a gap where the site lies within, and then we have the southern area here. And this is just to show a little bit clearer. Monument is clearly identified there. We've got the Swan Inn public house up to the north. This arrow here just shows where the post office is. We've got the village hall here, and down the bottom here we've got Hoxne Primary School. Looking at some further details, the purple outlines, you can see one in the north and one in the south. These denote the 2 conservation areas. These are polyfocal conservation areas, and we can see that gap in between. And you can see that we've got residential development at the bottom of Hoxne Hill here, a few here, the 2 houses opposite, and the Abbey terraced semi-detached buildings here. We've also got the settlement boundary line in green for Hoxne at the north, which is a countryside village, and then to the south it's seen as a primary village here. And just also to show the floodplain areas, and what you'll notice here is Abbey Hill, which is the road that runs along here, is lower, closer to the floodplains obviously, and it goes uphill to the south. You also notice the numerous different listed buildings within the conservation area to the north. We've also got a grade 2-star listed building here. Similarly, we also have a grade 2-star listed building here and a grade 2 listed building here. The monument, just for clarification, is grade 2 listed. This just shows the special landscape area majority of which is to the north and to the northeast. And this slide here, I just want to highlight is the details in terms of this is Abbey Hill Road coming up. This is the site, and what I wanted to just identify here is this green dotted line, which is the public right of way. So that comes off the road, goes back on itself towards the north, goes across the top here, eastwards, then comes all the way back round and almost does a big loop, if you will, back onto Abbey Hill. You'll note that I've commented on that PRAW in paragraph 6.3 and 6.6 in the report. So site location plan that was submitted, you can see that we've got two accesses, which we'll go into a little bit more detail in a second. But just to show again, you've got the two neighbours opposite, the semi-detached buildings of Abbey Terrace here, the monument located there, and the line of development. And this area here is where the floodplain comes in. And we've got a grade 2 listed building in here as well. So straight into the site location plan, there's a lot of information here. Inevitably, it'll be a slide that we probably go backwards and forwards to throughout the committee. I will start by just going through the trees. They're mentioned quite a bit in the report. So at the bottom here, we've got the T1 oak tree. The dotted line, we then have the T2 ash tree. That is proposed to be removed, and I will go into that in a little bit in a second as well. But just to continue with the identification of trees, we've then got the T3 ash tree, which is to be retained, and the T4 ash tree, which is also to be retained. We also have the addition of the T5, T6 and T7 trees, and also the replacement ash tree that will replace the T2 one that's to be removed. Now, the reason that they're going to be removing this tree is simply because we need to make sure that we have access wide enough for the highway standards of 4.5 metres to access the two plots 3 and 4. Now, the original part of the application actually had this at a 3.5 metre width access, which would then only access plot 4 as per the highway standards, and which would mean that we could retain that tree. However, the subsequent issue with that is that plot 3 would then have to come off the first access, and would also mean that it would cross over the permissible path that we will go into in a bit more detail throughout this presentation, but it would then mean that we'd have a driveway that crosses over. So it's seen actually to have two plots coming off the one at the expense of the loss of the tree, which will be compensated with a new tree, which over time will obviously regrow. So just going into the plot details now, you'll notice that plot 1 has a large floor space area. That's because it's a single-storey dwelling, and we also have an outbuilding, which is a 2-bay cart lodge with office space or study room, if you will, in there. Plots 2 and 3 are almost mirror images of one another. We have the detached garages or cart lodges, if you will, either side of them. And plot 4, again, has an actually attached garage in this instance. So the next thing I'd like to bring your attention to is you can see on the right-hand side of the page, this denotes where the monument is located. And what has been shown here is that we have a view through between plots 1 and 2, and we also have a view straight down the middle. And there's some steps, you can just see it's indicated there. It says steps. There are some steps, and we'll see on some photographs of the site in a second, that lead up and across the existing permissive path across there. So a couple of points that I'd like to point out. You'll see within the report that whilst it has been noted that this is appreciated, and it actually came as a part of amendment of some existing application that was withdrawn where plot 1 actually blocked this view. This is a view that we can make sure that we can condition that no outbuildings, no extensions, no fences can be erected within this area more readily across the whole site. But what we can't prevent in this area is planting. A future occupier of this house could come in and plant hedgerow down there that could block that. So I haven't given that as much weighting in the decision making as you'll see in the report. However, what's key in this part is this has been identified as a key view. And this view has been identified within the heritage reports that coincide with the Hoxne conservation areas. It's been identified as Key View 9, and again that's identified within the reports. But what we'll see is, as we'll go through the slides, that this view is going to be interrupted, or the setting of this view is going to be interrupted by this development in the first instance. But what we look at in the report is that by the time we've moved through the site, it becomes uninterrupted, and particularly when you get into this stage, the monument is obviously going to be uninterrupted from development looking out towards the northeast, east and southeast. Just making sure I haven't forgotten anything on this. I'm sure we will come back to this slide shortly, so we'll move on for now. Just to go through the elevations and plan drawings. Plot 1, as said, is a single story dwelling. We've got some pictures on the roof of making sure that we don't have any kind of right angles in there. We've also got the single story outbuilding, 2-bay with the home storage, home office, which we all know is obviously useful in the current times that we have. But also to identify that this is a 4-bedroom house in this plot. We've got master bedroom, bedroom 2, 3 and 4 stroke study. Notice as we have some vertical cladding and horizontal cladding as well, of a mix, and the pan tiles. Moving on to plots 2 and 3, again these are mirror images, so what you'll see here, I'll show you plot 3 in a second. We've got the chimney on the left hand side, we've got the windows at the eaves levels, we've got brick plinths. At the moment the drawings are dictating that we're going to have render. You'll notice in my report that I've asked for a materials condition to be added to any approval on the application, as I feel that plots 2, 3 and 4 it's probably an overbearing amount of render, and actually the plot could do with some diversity in materials on the external facing, but that can be dealt with as part of a condition. And again, just to show the floor plans, we're looking at 3-bedroom houses for both plots 2 and 3. So that's plot 3 and plot 2. Like I say, they're identical mirror images of one another. Moving on to plot 4. Oh, sorry, this is the garage, detached garages for both plots 2 and 3 as well, so you can see that. I'll just skip over that now. Plot 4 is the larger of the 4 plots. We can see again that we've got the steep pitch roofs, we've got the brick plinths, we've got, and I've shown quite clearly within the report, the different sizes of the different ridge heights. So we've got 8.4 metres on this one. And you can see here that we've got the attached garage on this side. Again, the floor plans, again, we're looking at a 4-bedroom house on plot 4. So an indicative landscape scheme in regards to the permitted path. So at the moment it is just a permissive path. It is recommendation, and we do have a section 106 in with our legal team at the moment that are looking at that draft that will secure this path in perpetuity and guarantee access to the monument out the back for all public members of the area. What's key to sort of denote here is, as you'll notice within the report, I've talked about a 13-metre buffer. The fence line, that's a post and rail fence that's proposed coming across to here, the 13 metres is from here to here. So we can actually see that we've got some additional buffer outside of that area as well. And again, this has taken some amendments through different schemes that have had conversations with ourselves, Planning Authority for a pre-app, and also I understand some informal conversations via email to the Parish Council, which I'm sure they'll let you know about at the vote part to speak. This here bonded shingle is not happening. Apologies, I've taken this from a different drawing, but this will be a pebble kind of finish, non-bonded. Reason for, we need to make sure that the site is still permeable, because what we don't want to do is exacerbate any flood area risking to the north, which I showed you on the maps as well. And again, just to note that we have got post and rail fencing all the way along, so we've got traditional agricultural fencing throughout the whole site in between the plots. Okay, moving on to a street scene section here. We can see the symmetry between plots 2 and 3, kind of giving you an indication here, and the orientation, which we will see again on that block plan. It's kind of given an entrance to the monument at the rear of the site, with that buffer area at the front. We can see that the T2 tree has been replaced. We will be replacing it with another tree, which over time will grow. We've got the oak tree in front of plot 4 here, and the T4 ash tree that's existing here, and the new trees that will be planted as part of the scheme. We can just see here that we've got Abbey Terrace, which comes along. This isn't, I just wanted to make clear that this line here isn't showing the line of the houses at all. It's actually just the telegraph poles and the wires, so don't get that confused that it's trying to denote any type of line of ridge heights or anything like that. It's not doing that at all. We've got some street scenes sections on the other side, so plot 4 looking through it. We've got the houses on the other side. I'll point out which one Grassmere House is. It's the modest out of the two plots that are opposite. And then obviously plot 2 showing the stairs. I might just be able to zoom in a little bit here. So we can see the existing, the stairs that are existing and the grassway that goes through. This is the path with the hedgerow, the post and rail that will lead out to the monument. There's a substantial buffer still between where the end of the plots are to where the monument is in its setting. Let's zoom back out of that. We'll go through some photographs. I've got quite a few here, so I will try and not scan through them too quickly, but if there is any that we need to go back to, just keep an eye on the slide numbers and I can easily get back to them for members. Okay, so this is looking from the south, looking north. Abbey Road, you'll see here, comes up to the plot and then it goes off to the northwest downhill, and we're currently standing here looking in this direction, so we can see the rows of Abbey Terrace here. I've just pointed out this arrow here. There's a gap kind of in the tree lines there. I think it's quite reasonable to suggest that we're likely to see plot 4 come above here, but it's not necessarily going to have a huge impact on the kind of character of the street scene, as we can see that they're quite prominent in the roofscapes as you go along there anyway. This arrow here is just noting where the entrance to the steps are, so there's a clear indication, and we can see quite clearly there's a verdant area in front of the site. So just moving along, again keep an eye on here where these photographs are taken from. We've got the oak tree in front of us here. We've got the T2 tree, which is to be removed. It is quite a substantial tree. And then we've just got the T3 tree, which is just coming out there, which will become more prominent within that street scene with the loss of this one. So I will just quickly pop back there. You can just see the start of the stairs there. Okay, so we're standing right in front of it. I think that this is a kind of unfortunate photo actually, because we do have a large amount of shrubbery that is actually blocking the monument currently from this position. I can guarantee you if that was just cut out, you would see the monument quite clearly. And you'll notice as we go through, that's the shrubbery that we were just talking about, and the monument is quite clear there. Moving a bit further into the site, we have a mowed area at the moment, approximately 1.5 meters, 2 meters in width. And the monument is obviously there. We've got shrubs, overgrown shrubs in this area. This field currently is agricultural use. It could be cleared, it could be ploughed and crops grown on it. So there's a monument. It basically represents an oak tree that fell, you'll see there, in August 1843. It was seen or presumed that that oak tree was perhaps the oak tree that St Edmund's was martyred up against, and there is tales that a arrowhead was found within that tree when it fell in 1843. The statue wasn't actually erected, or sorry, the monument wasn't actually erected though until I believe 2001. Just a bit of context on that. So basically got my back to the monument here and looking out. You can see the modest Gransmere that I indicated on the sectional drawings, and we also have the Rosemount house here on the right hand side, and these just show the trees that to be kept in green. So that's your oak tree, they're the two ash trees, ash 4 and ash 2, and then that is the ash 3, and this is ash 2 that is to be removed and replaced. So a few more photos. Standing at this the top of the stairs, and we're kind of looking down Abbey Road Hill. Again, look, if you see in the top left hand corner where the photo is taken from, that's Abbey Road Hill there. Cyclists just going down there now. You'll notice here that we've got a cluster of buildings to the north, which are just off picture at the top here, but these start to show where the special landscape area, which is mainly by covered in trees from this point in the floodplains. So we just skipped down Abbey Road Hill and we're now looking back up. You'll notice that we have the pathway on this side and the road on this side. The next slide that we go to will follow up the road, but I will come back to the path. I've just put an arrow there to denote where the monument is. Those with good eyesight on site will be able to see the monument in this position, but you would have to look out for it, but it is there. This picture doesn't necessarily, I mean, cameras, as everyone is aware, makes it difficult to see, but on site, you can see it if you've got good eyesight there. So just moving up the road, we can see that we've got the verdant areas that are blocking the monument in this sense, and do be aware that obviously this is summertime that these photos were taken. I do have a couple of clips taken in winter time that we will flip back to make sure that we don't have any bias of site visits that have taken place in different times of the year. But obviously this time of the year you can't see it. What I would note here is that you begin to see, and is likely that you're going to see plot 1 emerge here, but we are going to have those trees that are in front of it. So the street scene from this sense is going to continue to have a verdant sense, verdant character. And again, keep an eye on where we're taking these photos from. It's this part that I've talked about, plot 3 becoming apparent in this view here. You'll probably see the principal elevation of plot 3 coming in here, and plot 4 to the right hand side of it, giving us the orientation of direction of where the monument is located. Skip back over onto the path, and I've got a couple of photos here. So in this view, coming straight across Abbey Hill Road and across, this view is going to be lost. Plot 1 is going to block that view of the monument. I think it's important to make sure that that's clear. And again, plot 1 is likely to make the monument, which you can just see on the top of the fence line from the road view, will be blocked again. But as we move up the road a little bit further, this is where, and I indicated on the map, on the block plan, that view will then come apparent again through the site. And I think it is important again to stress that whilst we can condition to make sure that we don't have any built form, fences, outbuildings, extensions alike in that area, we cannot prevent boundary treatment such as hedgerows being planted in that space. But I think what is important is the key the top of the stairs, and we're looking directly north again at that cluster. We can just see the public right-of-way sign there, which shows the public right-of-way runs down towards these buildings, and we can see obviously the special landscape area, like I said, which is the floodplain, and the verdant verdant trees that we can see in full bloom there. We've also got some photos obviously taken earlier on in the year. You can see now this area, as we've had some photographs showing what was in full foliage, it's now got no leaves on it, and again that special landscape area, greenery is quite obviously lost there. We can see the public footpath a lot more clearer there, and this tree in front of us is the T4 tree that will be retained, and the T5, 6 and 7 trees which will be planted along this boundary here. So again, earlier on in the year, I believe these photos were taken in January, and again you can see the scale and massing of the houses opposite, the modest one to the left-hand side, and we can see here what the plot currently looks like in these times. And again, it's a shame that I haven't taken this photo 2 meters to the right so we can see it in line with the steps, which is the views that have been talked about. But there's the monument in its full glory. The permissive path that currently goes along there will obviously be secured as part of a Section 106 as part of a public benefit that's been outlined in the report. And this photo also, just to make sure that we're aware that we've got the context of the site. This was taken in 2017, back when the outline permission was granted. We can see that we did actually have an agricultural field in this instance, and the permissive path is nothing but kind of walking through the shrubs that are on that field at the moment. And last photo here is part of what was submitted as the statement with the application. This is what plot 4 is a picture of what plot 4 could look like, plot 1 and plots 2 and 3. So just to conclude, based on the planning balance outlined in the paragraphs of the report 11.1 and to 11.6 of the committee report, it's considered that the positive weightings clearly outweigh those given to the negative impacts, and recommendation is to approve this application subject to the conditions within the report and the Section 106 agreement, which is currently with our legal team as the draft. Thank you very much, Chair. Open to questions.
Thank you very much, Jamie. That was really thorough. And I've also just had a note from John Pateman G to say that it's not for blank approval, it's for grant approval, which is in our papers. So questions from members. Let me just have a look at the hands. See who's first. So I've got Sarah Mansell.
Thank you, Chair. I've got a couple of queries, but first I would like to thank Jamie for a very thorough presentation. I thought that was excellent. My first question is about the boundary treatment between plots 1 and 2. You said that there would be a condition that would prevent future people putting a fence there, but we couldn't do anything about the trees. But what is the current boundary treatment that is proposed as part of this application? Because presumably there is something between those two plots. And my second question is about the expiry date of the outline planning permission, which I presume that there's obviously the time limit is about, I don't know whether it's about submitting the reserve matters or getting reserve matters through, and what the implications are should that lapse.
Yes, of course. Thank you very much. I'll start with the boundary treatment question. The whole of the boundary treatment where you cannot see the planting of shrubs and hedgerows is the 1 metre post and rail fencing or metal estate fencing, again, which we can condition. I think ideally we would like to see the metal estate fencing in terms of the traditional post and rail that we ordinarily would see, but I don't think that there would be any adverse impacts if it was a timber post and rail, but we can condition that to make sure that we've got full details after an application if it was to be approved. And that essentially is all the way around all of the boundaries. So we can see the blue line is behind that red line that indicates the post and rail fencing. It goes around each plot, and it also goes along the permissive pathway, which will be secured as part of the Section 106. So hopefully that's a little bit clearer. In regards to the expiry date, I understand that the outline application is due to expire on the 25th of August 2020. The conditions that are set mean that they only have to submit the reserve matters application. So should it be deemed, if it went down this line, that the application should be refused today, they can submit, they can appeal that decision, also resubmit a new application tomorrow or between now and the 24th of August, and we would have to consider that application as it is submitted. I hope that helps.
Thank you for that. So if for instance there was a recommendation for refusal from this meeting, and they then resubmitted another application, it would have to be before the expiry date, the August date. But if it lapsed, then they would, I mean, there's nothing to stop them reapplying for the outline or putting in a fuller planning application, presumably.
Yeah, that would be correct. I think if this one was refused today, they could obviously appeal it, and that appeal could take place outside of the lapsing of the outline application at the end of August. But again, they could submit something tomorrow. They could submit something on the 24th of August, so long as it's submitted to the local planning authority. It doesn't necessarily have to be validated. As long as it's submitted, then they have met the tests of that condition that was applied to the outline.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Next one up is John Field.
Just a couple of points on the monument itself. I understood it was put up around 30 something when the tree fell down. You implied as you went through that it was much more recent than that. I just would like to hear that clarified. The other, we know it was listed in 2018. Did we have any view about any evidence at all about the number of visitors to this monument? Is it, something we've seen a lot of comment from local people that they're very sensitive about their heritage, but have we evidence that this is a big tourist attraction? So large numbers of people appear regularly or not?
Yeah, just going to your first question, thank you, Councillor. I stand to be corrected if I am wrong, and I apologise because I know there is local interest in this monument. My understanding is that, as it shows on their monument itself, if I just zoom in, the tree itself fell down in August 1843, and you can't quite see it on here, but it was part of the Hoxne Millennium project to erect this, and I believe was in 2001.
That's not
again,
correct.
Apologies. No. Can hear someone's voice there.
Sorry, Chair. I really don't want to be butting in, but I do feel it's important. If I
I'm
could
afraid,
question.
Miss Foot, we're not allowed to hear
No.
anything at this stage. You can speak when you're 3 minutes. Sorry about that.
Okay.
Okay. Apologies, Sarah. I will stand to be corrected on that. I think the key thing about this is that it was listed in 2018. In terms of your second question, Councillor Field, I do not have and have not been provided any evidence in terms of numbers or tourism numbers that come as a result of this, but I do know that it is an attraction.
Thank you.
So John Matheson next.
Hello. There's two things. Looking at the monument there, I would take a guess that we're going to hear that actually the old monument was re-erected on a finer plinth in 2001. I'm guessing, but my question really was that I don't quite understand how, if the outline permission regarding archaeology was explicitly in order to inform our decision today, but it's not been carried out. I can't quite see how we're being asked to wriggle around that original condition, or whether one of the officers can explain that a little bit more.
Yeah, no, happily answer that for you, Councillor. So just to elaborate, the original recommendation for a condition on the outline application was for the investigation works to archaeological interests to take place prior to the submission of the reserve matters. Now, that wasn't what the condition was worded on that. Unfortunately, that's out of my control as an officer at this stage. But what we have looked into is that condition is strong enough to ensure that we still have control over any outcomes that come as a result of archaeological investigations. So if I put it like this, if we granted the application today for approval based on this, they would still need to discharge that condition in regards to archaeological investigations on the outline application. Should that, and I've spoken quite length with the archaeological officer at Suffolk County Council, should we deem at that stage that any findings that have happened as a result of that investigation would mean that, let's say that, and it was described to me, it would have to be of national interest, that we would need to preserve what is in the ground, and it should be showcased if it wasn't to be removed and put into a museum, and it was to be showcased within the plot itself, and one of these houses was on top of that, we would be able to prevent this layout taking place as a result of that condition not being discharged. So we would say that we are not satisfied that any findings as a result of that archaeological condition would conflict with the design layout plan should you approve today. So we're quite satisfied that that condition would still control, from the planning authority's point of view, anything that could be found of national interest. And that was the key part of national interest. Thank you.
Yeah, if I could briefly come back and say that, I mean, that is reassuring that if the builders dig up the bones of King Edmund or something, it will call a halt to that plot being built there. Obviously, the wording was unfortunate at the time, and perhaps in that context, can we ensure that what you've just told us is somehow on the face of the permission should we decide to grant it?
Yeah, I happily put an informative onto any decision if we were minded to grant the permission today, and that informative would just outline that there are conditions that would still require discharging on the outline permission prior to commencement of development. And I think that's key, because we've done a lot of conditions recently where they're prior to commencement of development above slab level or prior to commencement of certain parts of the development. This condition that is on the outline is explicit in the sense that it is prior to development, full stop. So they can't start development unless that condition has been discharged.
Right, thank you. That's helpful.
Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, we've got Councillor Richard Mayer and then Councillor Hicks.
Thanks, Chair. Just a quick one. The path is currently a permissive path through the site and then across the farmland. The public right-of-way, will that be through the site to link with a permissive path across the farmland, or will it be a public right-of-way all the way to the monument?
Okay, so the PROW that is currently, and I'll just jump back to this slide here, which shows it a little bit better, doesn't go through the site at all, the PRW, and neither does it go to the monument. It goes around the back of the sort of wider field that the monument is within, and just to sort of note that whilst the road here, it slopes up slightly to the monument, it then does sort of slope and level out and plateau towards the PROW at the back. The permissive path that currently goes through the site, as we've seen on the photos, and I'll just go back to the block plan, it's easier, is permissive at the moment. We can all go out there and walk across that field to access the site, but what this application would do is secure this in perpetuity as a public access right of way across there. And that's not to say that it's a public access right of way that would be taken up by Suffolk County Council as a PROW in the same sense that this one is, but it is one that would be secured either to the maintenance of plots 2 or 3 or to a maintenance company, or should their negotiation be successful, then it might be a case that the parish council wanted to take it on, so they have control of that in the future. The section 106 has been worded, my understanding after seeing a draft, that all 3 eventualities could take place, but only one of them would happen. One of them would take place under that section 106.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. I've got Councillor Hicks would now like to ask a question.
Thank you. I'd just like to go back and ask a question more about the archaeological position that we're in. So conditions 7 and 8 on DC 17-02868, conditioned archaeological investigation. But we're sort of waiving that, and we're saying because something's happened. Could I have a opinion from our legal officer? Because if a condition is put in a previous application and that's not carried out, what is the validity that has been carried forward on this, please?
Ian, I'm happy to answer initially if you wanted to come in as well.
Ian, are you there?
Was for a second.
I was sorry, Madam Chairman, I was muted, but I think hopefully I can be heard now. And yes, just saying, let Jamie go first, and then I'll add anything if I need to.
Yes, the reserve matters and the outline application, if approved today, would be paired together. They would still need to carry out the duty of discharging all conditions on the outline application before development could commence. Those investigation conditions are the standard investigation archaeological conditions on the outline application. The only difference is that it was recommended at the outline stage that we change the first sentence to say that prior to submission of the reserve matters. That wasn't implemented by the officer at the time, hence the reason we're in this position, but we're still satisfied that they cannot commence without discharging the outline application conditions. Hopefully that's answered the question. Ian, did you want to add on?
Yes, no, I agree. I don't think there's anything more needs to be said unless Councillor Hicks still has a concern.
Councillor Hicks?
I mean, this feels very unusual. I mean, it doesn't. It makes me feel slightly uncomfortable, and I'm just trying to understand if something said something should be done prior to something happening. Well, then it isn't actioned.
Yeah, shall I add in? I mean, this is a very complicated area of law. Lots of people will say unnecessarily when you have conditions on a planning permission. There are some that are technically pre-commencement conditions where if you commence development without them, the development is actually unlawful. And it might, well, if it if it's there a long time, it might become immune. But there is cases have gone to the Supreme Court and back again over whether something truly is a pre-commencement condition, or whether it's just one that, if it's breached, you have to serve a notice saying sorting out now. So I think I'm happy with that Jamie's answer has given you the correct position on this. I don't know if there is nothing more you can say in the light of that, Jamie, I don't think.
Well, I will just add that if we kind of pluck the scenarios which could come forward, let's say that it is approved today and development started and they hadn't discharged that condition, we would have grounds that our enforcement team could prevent and stop developments going any further for them to be able to actually discharge that condition, and they would have to take out those thorough investigations in terms of archaeological detailings. We are satisfied, and I have checked that should they submit an investigation of works that is being carried out, and we've looked at it and we've said you've found something here and we think that this is of national interest, we would not discharge that condition if one of those plots or one of those houses in that current layout, which could be approved today, overlaid it or impacted it. And that would have to be seen on a case-by-case basis as that condition was discharged at that time.
Are you happy, Councillor Hicks? Well, ish.
I'll discuss that later. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Mayer, you've got your name back. Your hand back up.
Sorry, I haven't put it down.
All right, and the same go for you, Councillor Matheson. Did you have a question?
Yeah, I have put it down now, actually.
Oh, I see. So is there any more questions for the officer? Okay, so we shall move on. So now we move on to the public speakers, and the parish council representative, Sarah Foote, is now going to speak, and she has 3 minutes to address the committee.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry for interrupting earlier, and I wonder if I could correct the point of error that Jamie made. Is that all right? Yeah, before I start my 3 minutes. The monument was commissioned by Sir Edward Kerrison's daughter, who was Lady of the Manor in 1907 and constructed in 1908. I would hate any of the members to think that it had only been there for 19 years. That is not the case. And I know Jamie will stand corrected. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Okay, so in 2017, your council did not have an up-to-date local plan and could not provide a 5-year land supply. An outline planning application was submitted to build on greenfield land, which divides the two conservation areas of Hoxne. The site is outside of the development boundary and home to a Grade 2 listed building, St Edmund's Monument, which is of great significance to both Hoxne and Suffolk. The parish council, along with other statutory consultees and numerous members of the public, requested refusal of the outline application. Despite what should have been perceived as a controversial application and dealt with as such by your scheme of delegation, it was determined by one officer. The parish council remains of the opinion that if Mid Suffolk District Council had been able to deliver a 5-year land supply, the permission would not have been granted. Today, the parish has had to accept there will be some development on this unique site. What the parish cannot accept is the scale and design of the detailed application and how it has pushed the outline permission for up to 4 dwellings to the extreme. Hence the parish council's recommendation to refuse. This recommendation details the unacceptable size and scale of the proposed properties and their proximity to and detrimental impact on a Grade 2 listed building, and we today ask for you to make the same decision. There are many principles of the MPPF which this application is contrary to. They are listed in our written representation, but I will refer you to the 2 most relevant. Paragraph 130, I quote, "Planning Commission should be refused for development of poor design that fails to take opportunities available for improving the character and quality of an area." There are no characterful elements presented in this application. The proposed dwellings could instead be built in any housing scheme anywhere in the country. Rather than using the listed monument as a key design feature, the scheme turns its back on the monument, blocks the uninterrupted views, and as such is highly detrimental to the village's heritage. Para 185, I quote, "Plans should be set out a positive strategy for the conservation and enjoyment of the historic environment, taking into account the desirability of new development, making a positive contribution to local character. There is no evidence that the development can in any way have a positive or sustainable contribution on the historic environment in which it will be built. We would ask for consistency of decision making. An application for development opposite to this site was recently refused, and I quote Jamie Edwards, "The proposal results in the loss of the site as an undeveloped area, forming part of the setting and contributing to the significance of two conservation areas, and would considerably suburbanise the rural setting. This detailed scheme for Abbey Hill represents maximum gain for the developer and maximum loss for the village. You can mitigate some of this loss by voting today to refuse this scheme. Thank you."
Thank you very much. We have one question at the moment from Councillor John Matheson.
Thank you. You mentioned the effect on a listed building. Can the officer or you clarify which particular one we're talking about on the plans?
Yeah, if I may, Councillor Matheson, the St Edmunds Monument, if you look on the historic England listing, is a Grade 2 listed building.
Sorry, yeah, okay, yeah. And so I thought we were referring to one of the other buildings.
There are listed buildings in the vicinity, but I was referring to the Grade 2 listed building.
Okay,
monument.
sorry.
No,
good, thank you.
Are there any more questions for the Parish Council? Oh, John Field, you've got your hand up.
Thank you. It was just my question again, really about how popular this is, how significant it is as a tourist attraction, if you like. The small amount I could read yesterday sort of implied that it's by no means certain that this is the site of St Edmund's execution, martyrdom, but it may well be. Does that attract large numbers of visitors to this area? So we haven't yet assessed really. It's
I suppose, sorry if I may, I suppose it's subjective what you call large numbers. Radio Suffolk broadcast live from the monument on the 20th of November last year, St Edmund's Day. I would say most days you spot someone in the field taking a look at the monument. The monument is part of the Hoxne and Historic Walk scheme. So there's a map in the village. Tourists walk around to several sites of significance, and the monument is one of those.
So it is known. Thank you.
Yeah.
Are there any other questions? So we'll move on to the objector. We have Mr. Rob Marsh-Farley here.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Can everybody hear me? I assume you can hear me. Yes, this.
You have 3 minutes.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, this site is obviously not just an ordinary field. It's incredibly important to the village in several ways and to the legend of St Edmund. It forms an important rural gap between the village, which is split into two parts. The site is also outside the village boundaries. It gained approval for up to 4 houses, not 4 houses, up to, and the location of the access originally approved was so poor in the original scheme, it has now been moved. The application, therefore, before you today is to consider the layout, design, scale, landscape, and including access. The current design is described as appropriate and linear in form, as it matches the local area. This is not an appropriate form for this specific site. It creates a wall of development virtually with no gaps. Mid-Suffolk has lots of examples of developments that the layouts have often been set in semicircles, creating a green in front of them, like Wingfield, Horham, Whirlingworth, and many others. A layout like this would create some symbolism to the approach to the monument. The current scheme does not create a sense of place, nor recognise the importance of the monument. It goes to shield it from public view. The scheme goes further to diminish the significance of the monument by framing it between 2 garages and a sea of car parking. The design of the houses is completely inappropriate in design and scale. It offers nothing in the way of design quality, nor reflect the local distinctiveness, which is a key point within the NPPF. To put scale in context, one of the houses is similar in scale to the village hall, one of the most prominent buildings in the village. The NPPF is a powerful tool to enable sustainable development, which is why this outline was granted in the first place, when Mid Suffolk did not have their 5-year housing supply. It is also an essential tool to promote good quality design, and where schemes do not present quality design, they should be refused. There are very few houses of the scale that are proposed in this village. These are all set well behind significant hedge screening and trees. And if this was done on this site to shield the scale of the developments, it would further gain to isolate the monument from the village. An alternative approach to create a front would enable the houses to be built and create a sense of space and place, that welcoming the villagers and the visitors to the monument. We have a great opportunity with this to create.
If this can be your last sentence, please.
Oh, okay. The scheme fails to achieve and realise the opportunities given within this outline application, and the scale is way inappropriate. And given the rural nature of and character of the site as it is, it seems impossible that this scheme should go ahead in this form. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do we have any questions for the objector? Right, I can't see any, so we shall move on to the applicant. I'm Sarah Roberts. So you have 3 minutes to speak, Ms. Roberts.
Thank you. Do you want me to put the video on as well?
Yeah, please.
Right. As you know, I'm Sarah Roberts, the agent. I was the agent for the outline application and now for the reserve matters application, which deals with the design of the approved scheme and outline. We started with an informal pre-app inquiry on this site in March 2017, which was prior to the prepaid service, which is now in place. Outline permission was granted for the 4 dwellings. The principle of development is established on the site. And so we're now, as has been previously said, dealing with appearance, layout and landscaping, and the entrances, which are more or less in the same place as shown on the outline. The reserve matters application has now been through a separate formal pre-app route as well, including a meeting with the planning officer and the heritage officer. The main issue with the site, as raised by local residents, is the perceived impact on the Victorian cross within the agricultural field 30 metres behind our site. During the reserve matters design process, we engaged with the parish council and widened the front of the central open space to ensure clear and improved views to the cross once the visitor is at the top of the roadside steps. We've had a Section 106 agreement prepared to ensure the vista and path through our site will be tied into the permission. With a minimum path width of 4 metres at the rear and wide frontage of 13 metres at the roadside, this portion of land is available for gifting to the parish council in perpetuity once landscaped to the parish council's requirements. The parish have indicated their interest in this arrangement, hence the draft 106 to secure it, but that is still up for final approval by the parish council themselves. It should be noted there is a further 30 metres from our site boundary to the monument, which is outside our control, as one of the councillors inquired about earlier. The current permissive path through the field to the monument has always been subject to planting and ploughing seasons. I visited the site in 2017 when the whole of the field was planted with beet. One of my photographs was shown in the presentation. There's never been any formal track or path here. There is another formal public footpath around the field, which still offers long unblocked views to the monument. Pre-application responses from the planning officer and heritage officer confirmed they would be comfortable with the 4 metre wide pathway, as this affords good separation and clear views to the monument. There is an opportunity here to greatly improve the approach to the monument from its existing state, including a managed verge and small open space frontage. with a wide path to create a sense of place and to frame the monument from the road. The Heritage Officer commented, in my view, the reserve matters proposals with the amendments discussed can be supported as having neutral impact on the setting and significance of the monument and of the conservation area and resulting in no harm to heritage assets. And the proposal will allow the opportunity to secure the path, one that allows the unveiling, direct sight and appreciation of the monument in perpetuity via a legal agreement. This will ensure the enjoyment of the monument can be obtained in the future for both the residents and visitors. I consider this to be a public benefit. That's the Heritage Officer. In terms of layout and design, the site layout basically reflects the traditional village ribbon form of development, but the two middle...
This can be your last sentence, please.
Oh, right. The two... just a note about the archaeology, that just to clarify, the condition was a pre-commencement condition. The condition as written on the outline was not a pre-reserved matters submission condition. But obviously I can answer any questions on my other notes. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do we have any questions for the applicant? For the agent? I've actually got one which I probably could have asked Jamie. Is the field owned by the same landowner as the application site?
I think that the field is owned by the farmer, which and I understand that the application site is in a separate ownership.
But is it part of the farmer's family? So is it anything to do with the farmer?
I can't answer that, I'm afraid.
Okay, thank you.
I think that the parish council is familiar with the farmer, and maybe it's something that they should bring up. They should raise directly with him.
All right. I now have a question from Councillor John Field.
Just on the issue of the archaeology, it seems fairly obvious that if this site is indeed the site of the execution of a King of England, there might well be some archaeology around, perhaps a shed load of arrows, if nothing else. Could you explain why no action's been taken to investigate that and give us a better basis for our decision?
Yeah, I can explain why. Getting permission on sites is an extended and costly business, and until we're sure that the site is going to be able to be developed, then it's a big undertaking for a developer to undertake archaeological works at risk if permission on a site is not secured. We had a site in Wortham where the archaeology ended up costing almost £300,000. So that it's a question of risk management, and it's preferable for us to establish that the site is actually going to be developed and then carry out the archaeology rather than the other way around. Especially as up to this point the ownership is still in the original ownership. So it's a question of risk management and making sure that we are actually going to be able to develop the site and then carrying out the archaeology.
I say thank you, but you have got outline planning permission, which I thought established a principle. And when I got planning permission for a set of football pitches on a site of an old workhouse, I can assure you the cost of archaeology was nothing like the one you just quoted. So I am somewhat surprised, because it would have made these decisions much easier.
Well, as I think the planning officer pointed out, the results of archaeological investigation will either, if the condition can't be discharged, then the development won't go ahead. If the archaeology is such that it would prevent development, then the development won't go ahead. It's not getting reserved matters doesn't mean that we don't have to carry out the archaeology. We will have to do that, and it will still have to be, the condition will still have to be met, and the archaeology will still have to be assessed, and if there's anything there, it will have to be dealt with.
I don't want to labour the point, but clearly had you done the archaeology, we might know that this is an ancient site, and if it had turned up nothing, we might be suspicious that it wasn't. So I'll leave it there. But
thanks for this, John. John Pateman-G would just like to come in at this point.
Yes, sorry to interrupt. I think we need to be careful here in terms of going into the archaeological condition. Ultimately, at the end of the day, Suffolk County Council archaeological team did not seek to refuse the outline planning permission based on lack of information or risk of discovery at the time of that application. The application before us is a reserve matters application for a landscape, layout, scale, and appearance and access. The control in terms of the archaeological condition is in place. And, we have the power to enforce that. That is totally within the power of the local planning authority. And the assumption must be made by members that we shall do so in order to uphold the outline planning permission. I would be just a little concerned that we are trying to unpick that essential condition that is embedded within the outline, for which this is a reserve matters application that is an extension of that outline. Thank you.
Thanks, John. I will just have one more question from Sarah, Councillor Sarah Marshall for you. Ansel, sorry.
Thank you. I just want to get my head round the possible results from any archaeological survey that is carried out, because maybe I misinterpreted what the planning officer was saying, that if after you've done the archaeological survey you find something significant, will it stop all 4 of those dwellings being built in the positions that they are currently, or could it be that if the only significant remains are under the plot of 1, would the other 3 still be able to go ahead? I'm not sure if this is a question for the agent or whether it's a legal or a planning matter, because obviously the layout is, as we see it, has 4 houses in. If you upset the balance, it may have a different effect. So I just want to know if should there be something significant found, are we going to see maybe 1 being redesigned or all 4 of them being redesigned?
Yeah, I'm happy to try to answer that question for you. I think, and hopefully you can see the block plan on there as well. I think what's an important factor in answering that question is what would be found. Until we actually know if it is an arrow in the top right hand corner and that is nothing else, or whether we've found 1,000 arrows and loads of other stuff catering across the whole site, I think it would have to be proportionate to what is actually a result of the investigation works. And until we know that, we wouldn't really be able to say yes or no today whether or not plot 1 would have to be completely redesigned or cut out completely, or whether all 4 plots would have to be removed completely. I think what is important here is the conversation that I had with our colleagues in Suffolk County Council, the Archaeology Department, was it needs to be defined as national interest for something to be so substantial that it would result in redesign of the site.
Thank you for that. I think that's sort of answered my question, but there are clearly a lot of unknowns.
Yes, hence the reason, luckily, the condition still controls those unknowns. So we will know those prior to them being able to commence the development. And I think that's the key indication here in this conversation.
May I just come in just on that last point as well? This is not an unusual situation. Ultimately, we have many archaeological conditions imposed on development. And I'm not belittling this site by any means, but we have these imposed in this form and in this time, in the same sequence of time, in respect of various applications for housing across the district, some of which are closer to listed buildings or groups of listed buildings, and grade 1 listed buildings, where it is deemed appropriate because of the risk that has already been assessed at outline stage by the archaeological team, that they are looking to impose a condition rather than stop the principle of development being proposed, and they are satisfied that they can deal with what they may find at the later stage. It is, we need to see this in the wider context as well as the local consideration. Thank you.
Bad job.
Thank you for that comment as well. Thank you.
Councillor Mansell, do you still have a question? Oh, sorry, it's gone. Do you still have a question? Your hand is still up.
Sorry, I forgot to take it down.
Okay, have we got any more questions for the applicant? Okay, thank you very much. We'll now move on to the ward member, Councillor Matthew Hicks, to speak.
Thank you very much, and thank you, members.
Firstly, sorry, Matthew, can I interrupt you to ask you, do you know if the field and the site is owned by the same person?
I don't know. So thank you, members. I don't really want to dwell on the reasons that we're here today and the controversy around the. Sorry, someone is talking. Can someone just turn their mic off? I'm picking up a voice. Thanks. I don't want to dwell on what happened in the past. Outline permission has been given. It was extremely controversial at the time. I wasn't the councillor then, so it's before my time. But this is no doubt a historic location that Suffolk should be proud of. And there has been clear delineation in the past between the settlements within Hoxne. And I'm extremely concerned that this will cause harm to that setting. So the application before us is for houses that I believe are of unnecessary size and scale and form, but I'll come back to that. I firstly want to touch on the proximity of St Edmund's Monument to this development, and this is a Grade 2 monument. And the development does not protect either the natural or the historic environment. And in fact, I think it makes the layout and the access and the design and the approach to the monument far worse because it will be blocked by these proposals. So as the Parish Council has said in their report, rather than using the listed monument as a key design criteria and working with it, I think the current design actually turns its back on the monument and blocks what is uninterrupted views of the monument, and so is actually highly detrimental to the heritage of this village. Now, there has been, as the Parish Council has said, early results from local housing needs in Hoxne, and that suggests actually there's very little demand for 4-bedroom houses. There is demand for 2-bedroom properties. So it's a shame that the opportunity hasn't been taken to meet some of that housing need. But the overwhelming scale and the overwhelming height of the proposed developments is totally out of character, I believe. You've seen the pictures of the houses being proposed. They could be anywhere between Romford and elsewhere in the country. Are they Suffolk proud? Do they look like Suffolk design? Are they appropriate? That's for you to consider, and whether the scale, size and design is appropriate. I don't believe these houses bring any environmental impact to the site either. We should be building things that we're proud of environmentally. The development should reflect the design of historic Hoxne and the importance of this 2 parts of the village that we have, where this is in the middle of it all. The MPPF paragraph 124 is clear. The creation of high quality buildings and places is fundamental to the planning and development process and what should be achieved. Good design is a key aspect of sustainable development. I don't believe this is good design. Paragraph 127 of the MPF says planning policies and decisions should ensure that developments are visually attractive as a result of good architecture, layout, and appropriate and effective landscaping. Could you point out what is good architecturally about these or the layout? We're supposed to be sympathetic to local character and history, paragraph 127 says. That's really important. This is our history. It is Suffolk's history. That needs to be considered. And paragraph 130 of the MPPF talks about planning permission should be refused for development of poor design that fails to take the opportunities available for improving the character and quality of the area. I would argue that is the case in this occasion. And finally, MPPF paragraph 185 says plans should set out a positive strategy for the conservation and enjoyment of the historic environment. I don't believe this does that either. So I would argue there are multiple reasons why this doesn't add up and stack up for us today. it is not about perceived impact, which is what the agent said. It is actual impact. And these houses create one large wall of dominance, which I believe undermines and is inappropriate in this location. You've heard the parish council accepts outline permission has been given and something will come forward on this site. But I would question as to whether this is the design that is appropriate on this occasion for such a historic location that Suffolk is very proud of. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Do we have any questions for the ward member? That looks like a no. So we'll move on now to debate. Sorry, where am I? So yes, I'll open up the item for debate. If you wish to make a proposal after we've gone through the first round of debate, please use the hands up function. Okay, so who'd like to start? Or should I just pick a name? Sarah.
Thank you, Chair. I think, you know, I think it's a bit regrettable that we are where we are really with this application site. And we've heard quite a lot about the archaeology and the fact that Suffolk County Council were quite happy at the time of granting outline permission that they were satisfied that the condition that was imposed at that time was good enough. But of course, I think we have to remember that at that time, Mid Suffolk didn't have its 5-year land supply, and we're talking about we often talk about the tilted balance of you know, what are the benefits and the disbenefits of any planning application. And at the time that the outline planning permission was granted, there would have been a benefit that we would have got more houses to fill the need from our housing, a lack of housing land supply. So I think I think, you know, the whole archaeology of the site, this is clearly going to be you know, it's quite likely to have some significant archaeological finds in that site. I think it's a shame that the condition was worded in the way that it was, but we are where we are. But I really think, although we have to accept that this plot of land has got permission to have up to 4 houses on it, I don't think these are the right houses for this particular plot. As has been said by other objectors and the ward member, they do nothing to enhance the surroundings of the monument and the listed building, nor do they do anything to enhance the character of Hoxne Village. In fact, they appear from local perception that there is harm to the historic setting, and yet we've heard from the heritage officer there's no harm. I'm a little bit confused about that, because we often have what's called less than substantial harm, and I would say that this is certainly harm, even if the heritage officers admit that it's less than substantial. In this case, I think that's a very subjective view, and I really don't think that the design and layout of this development is appropriate to its setting. I'm sure you know, okay, we're going to have 4 houses on here. They should be designed in such a way to enhance the historic setting, and this does not do that at all. So I will await to see hear what other members have got to say about it. But I, you know, at the moment I am unlikely to support this, because I really do think there are enough paragraphs in the NPPF relating to design and heritage that we could pin a refusal on. But I will wait to hear what other people have to say. But should the need arise, once I've heard what other people say, I would be maybe able to make a proposal.
Thank you. Jamie, do you want to come in now? I see you've got your hand up.
Yeah, if that's okay, Chair. Thank you very much. A couple of things that I just wanted to point out. Firstly, in terms of the comments from the heritage officer, you'll notice in my report that I have not said that there is no harm to the heritage setting. I've actually taken the comments of the other consultees and local community and said that there is less than substantial harm to the setting of the listed monument. And I've shown clearly within the conclusion of the balancing how I feel in this application, how that is weighed with the public benefits. I'll leave that obviously decision up to yourselves, members, throughout the rest of the debate about whether or not that's the right decision to make or not. The other thing that I just wanted to point out is that in terms of a layout, we have looked at different layout options. We had comments come from the objector regarding kind of a splayed type layout. We felt that that would end up with residential amenity impacts to the existing dwellings to the south of Abbey Terrace. And we felt that we had made many amendments to the application from the start to now to get to a proposal that is acceptable in terms of layout. It might then fall that members then still believe that the scale, mass and design of them outside of that layout remit is still a reason for a refusal. I'll leave that open to the debate, but I just wanted to add that we have looked at alternative layout options and made sure that this layout option is one that gives us the benefits of the views and without having residential impacts overlooking into gardens of existing dwellings. Thank you.
Councillor Stringer.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. Good. Yeah, this one is a really delicate and difficult one, and we are often in this position where a previous decision possibly didn't include what it needed to include to get a sustainable solution in the future. That doesn't mean to say that we shouldn't take everything that gets put before us and scrutinise it well and make sure everything's consistent with the policy position we find ourselves in. This one is, as I said, very difficult, and the officer's just actually, I'd already just written a phrase earlier on that the officer just said that the layout I don't think I have huge issues with. Where I do begin to get uncomfortable is with the scale and mass of the design. I get very bent out of shape about the heights of things and how imposing things can appear. And if you look at an average house is between 7 and 7.5 meters and roughly 100 square meters in floor space for the average 3-bedroom home. We now find buildings here that are taller and in some cases almost twice the size of a normal domestic home. So the outline did say up to 4, but if you think the average home is 100 square meters, you've actually got 600 square meters of development here, of living space. So it actually is not up to, it's actually sort of gone beyond in terms of it massing. I hate to say it, I quite like the way the bungalow looks on the site. I think that looks very appropriate in that setting. As it goes further to the right, I then get more issues. On your plan, plot 4 looks like it nestles quietly with Abbey Terrace, but in fact, of course, the ground slopes away, and it is significantly taller in height than Abbey Terrace. So I personally think, and we owe a huge debt to the future to get this one right. We must get this one right, because if we get it wrong, okay, former kings of England have been dug up from under car parks. So, but we really need to get this right. I am really disappointed that archaeological work hasn't actually gone on. And I'll tell you for why, because this site is within the draft joint local plan settlement boundary. It's in that submission. So the likelihood of there being development here, even this application lapses, is insignificantly high. So I'm really disappointed we're not here with all the information. I personally think that on balance, and it's a very close balance, that I wouldn't be prepared to support the scale and mass of the potential development here. I don't think this is appropriate in its setting, and I would support any movement or seconding to refuse this. But it is very much on balance, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Field?
Yes, I think I'm moving to the point where I too would not support the application. Certainly concerned about the development in the gap between the two elements of Hoxne, particularly since that gap is it accommodates an ancient monument. And as been said, the size and massing of these buildings seems quite excessive. And really, they're of a style which couldn't be regarded as respecting the local vernacular. It's not clearly not Suffolk style. It's somewhat universal to the country, perhaps. I too regret, as I've said before, the lack of the early archaeological work that might have established whether this is or is not an ancient site, the place of execution of a king. And I think other than that, most of what I feel has been said, so I'll leave it there. I shall listen to others and make a final decision.
Thank you. Councillor Mayor?
Thank you, Chair. To me, this is all about design, and it's about not just the design of the buildings, but how they tie in with that ancient monument. It will be so easy for the buildings to detract from the monument, hide the monument, and yet if it's well designed, they could also enhance that monument, tie the whole thing together. I do note in the written submission by the parish council, they make a suggestion that the design be submitted to the Suffolk Design Review Panel. I admit my ignorance. I've not heard of them before, but perhaps that's something that could be looked at, in that this is such a critical design that should that design rest on the shoulders of a heritage officer and our planning officer? Is it not a wider discussion that should take place, because this is potentially, or is a site of national importance? Looking at the building as they are suggested to me at the moment, I think a well-placed dustbin could hide the monument from the road. So is that pathway wide enough? The buildings do seem quite large, monumental almost, and that would detract from the ancient monument. So I think we have got a design issue here, and I don't know if anybody can throw any light on the Suffolk Design Review Panel, or whether that's even an option that's open to us. Thanks,
May
Chair.
I come in on that point, Chairman? Sure. So the Suffolk Design Review Panel, they don't tend to look at schemes of this size, if I'm perfectly honest with you. They tend to be far larger sizes that they look at, but they are a group of architects that, if the applicant wanted to, could pay for them to look at this scheme. There's no formal requirement for us or procedure for us to set this aside to be put forward to that group. They are a voluntary group of architects who come together to make comments on design. We wouldn't be able to refuse it on that issue either. That would be a very concerning thing to do. So I would urge that is not something that we should be considering in this context, and that the application needs to be determined on its own merits.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Matheson.
Thank you. Yes, I found the read beforehand of the papers particularly difficult. Hoxne's village I'm not familiar with to any degree really, and this I think the pictures and the slides would have been quite handy a few days ago in this particular case, and in other times we could argue well for a site visit actually to understand it better, and it was obviously even more uncomfortable realizing that probably the outline shouldn't have been granted in the first place, but here we are. Having said that, and understood the problem rather more, the landscape impact is actually quite significant. the difficulty is, can we get up to 4 dwellings in this plot, which will not have a big impact on the landscape, and that's quite difficult. If they were smaller, they would have a little bit less impact. So I kind of sympathise with the feeling that this is not the right design. I really don't, without going and looking at it all, I don't really understand whether, you know, what would be a better design layout, really. So it's all quite difficult. It's uncomfortable, unsatisfactory situation that we're in.
Thank you. I'm just going to throw my tuppence in with. I know Councillor Muller wants to speak, but I want to say that I did go and have a look at the plot yesterday, and what I felt was, although the look and the appearance of the bungalow on plot 1 is a fair design, I think the actual placement of it there cuts out most of the views that you get from the road as you come over the bridge and you look to see the monument. Like I say, the plot 1 would absolutely obscure most of that until you got past that house. And there might be one quick view as you drive past, but that would, like I say, blot out. That the slide Jamie just had on that first one there, like I say, that is what I would say as you come to the footpath as the footpath meets the road, that is the main, I would say, the main view of the monument, and that will be completely cut out by having that bungalow there. So that's my tuppence worth. And Councillor Miller, would you like to say your piece?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I must admit, I do agree and concur with all the comments that have been made. I do agree that paragraph 127 of the MPPF, particularly A and C, apply, and also paragraph 130. I don't think these buildings fit in with the nature of a Suffolk village. I could envisage them on a housing estate in a town, and the village perhaps would like the two bedroom houses, which are more appropriate. So at this stage, I don't feel I can support this application. Thank you.
Is there anyone else who would like to speak? Because I don't have any proposal for one thing or another. So yeah, I don't want to be flailing around in the dark, but Councillor Mansell.
Thank you, Chair. I think we've heard from everyone on the committee now, and there certainly seems to be a lack of support for this application. So I'll be bold enough to make a proposal that we go for refusal on the grounds that the design is not appropriate to the location, and nor does it enhance the surroundings of the listed monument. There are also some landscape impacts. I'm sorry if I haven't got the relevant numbers of the paragraphs of the MPPF, but I think a lot of them have already been mentioned. You know, somebody was saying that, you know, can we actually get 4 dwellings on here? But they don't have to be this big. We've already established that these are large 3-bedroomed houses. So I'm sure there are other ways that you could fit 4 smaller dwellings, which would have much less impact on the landscape and on the setting of the listed monument. So I will propose that we go for a refusal on landscape layout and bulk, you know, the bulk and the size of the design rather than the actual, you know, anything else, I think, and the setting of the list of the, you know, the views of the listed monument. I hope that is sufficient.
What John has come back with is the proposed dwellings, if approved, would by reason of their poor layout, dominate, scale and appearance, fail to be in character and are not sympathetic with the local area and history, and does not sufficient demonstrate local distinctiveness, and fails to add to the design quality and function of the area, contrary to GP1, HB1, H13, CS5 and MPPF P127 and 130. And I also see that hang on, I've lost something. Councillor Muller would like to speak.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yes, I would concur with what Councillor Mansell has said, and I am happy to second her proposal for refusal of this application. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. So John, would you like to come in and correct out my mangled speech?
Yes, sorry. Forgive the grammar there. I was just trying to put councillors' thoughts together quite quickly of what we've just been listening to. So just to put it in context, I think what members are trying to say here, that the proposed dwellings in terms of obviously what we've got before us, which is the layout, scale and appearance and landscaping, ultimately we can I just bear with me one moment? I've just realised something. 2 seconds. Okay. I'm just debating the word layout. In terms of layout, is it more towards the sort of scale and dominance of the buildings than the actual siting, or actually it's not layout, but it's more the siting of the building? So we need to change.
I think is it the layout or the siting? I'm not where I think plot 1. I think that part should be left clear.
So we're not into the layout specifically about the entire development. We're into the siting of the specific plots here.
Yeah,
so my suggestion would be this then: the proposed dwellings, if approved, would, by reason of poor siting, dominant scale and appearance, fail to be in character, are not sympathetic with the local area and history, does not sufficiently demonstrate local distinctiveness, and fails to add to the design quality and function of the area. And you may notice that picks up on certain key aspects of what the NPPF actually says. So in total, that would be contrary to your local plan policies of GP1, HB1, which refers to historic settings, H13, which is design of housing, as well as then CS5, which talks about general environment and good design within that environment, within the countryside especially. And then we have the NPPF paragraphs 127 and 130 specifically as well.
Councillor Mansell and Councillor Muller, are you happy with that?
Yes, and I was going to try and comment on the sort of layout and design, because obviously the layout of this design of house is causing a problem. That's not to say that this sort of layout for smaller dwellings may work. So I think I can't really separate the layout with the mass and scaling of it, because I think they are too intertwined. I think you can't have this layout with smaller houses. It might be all right. We don't know what those houses are going to look like, so they are sort of linked. But yes, I'm happy with that list that John Pateman G has suggested.
Well, I'm also happy with that, Chair. Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay.
Sorry, John, did you want to come back?
Just ultimately, the only other thing we could do is that rather than say poor siting, we could just say poor design, dominant scale and appearance, if we wanted to be a little bit broader than specifically on the siting.
I mean, I'm not proposing it, but I think the siting is very important as well. I also see John Matheson's still got his hand up. Do you want to say something else, John?
Yeah, I did actually. Councillor Mansell, in her proposal, did mention landscaping and or the impact on the landscape, I think, and that isn't in what the officers are proposing as the reasons at the moment, I don't think.
No, I hadn't picked up on landscaping in terms of what is the landscaping causing harm to.
No, the size. What's being proposed has a considerable impact on the landscape because it sits between the two conservation areas, etc. As distinct from all the arguments about the monument itself. That's the point I was. Anyway, it's up to the proposer and seconder really what they want in there.
If I can come in there, I mean, I think John Matheson is right. I mean, there is a sort of landscape issue because I mean, not that I'm familiar with Hoxne, but it appears that you go down that road and there will be a significant change to the views as you go from one bit of Hoxne to the next, regardless of whether there is a monument in that field. There is going to be significant change to the landscape, and that gap between the two bits of Hoxne appears to be significant to the community. So it is going to affect the landscape of that gap between the two bits of Hoxne. So whether that is truly landscape or whether it's just fitting in with its surroundings, I'm not quite sure of the difference.
I think the danger, if I may, is that the principle of development of up to 4 in some form has been agreed. So the gap or the development creep that means be sort of joining the village up together is already sort of set out in part in that principle. What we're landscaping of a scheme, we're down to the sort of boundary treatments and other aspects of that more so, I would perhaps suggest. But if we're saying the land, when you tie lands, design encompasses all of the issues of landscaping and character, and part of the rural character that we're trying to ensure that we've got a good quality development within. So, in broad terms, we can pull poor sighting. I would perhaps then suggest that we do take out the word sighting. What we're dealing with is the design as a whole. So poor design, dominant scale and appearance, and I can say, and landscaping, fails to be in character and not sympathetic with the local area.
Okay, that sounds fine to me.
Okay.
Are you happy with that, Councillor Muller, as well?
Yes, I'm also happy with that. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, so John, would you like to read out what you've got then? Thank you.
One moment, let me just read it through my head one more time.
Oh, John Matheson, have you still got your hand up? Is there something else you'd like to say?
No.
Cool, thanks.
Okay, yep. So I'll read that through one more time then. The proposed dwellings, if approved, would, by reason of poor design, dominant scale and appearance, and landscaping, fail to be in character and are not sympathetic with the local area and history, does not sufficiently demonstrate local distinctiveness, and fails to add to the design quality and function of the area, and therefore would be contrary to policies GP1, HB1, H13 of the local plan, and CS5 of the core strategy, and as well as NPPF paragraphs 127 and 130.
Okay, cool. So I'll now move to the vote, and I will ask the governance officer to conduct the roll call vote. Over to you, Robert.
Because my order of proceedings has decided not to work, so I will go through members, but it won't be in alphabetical order most likely. So I will start with Councillor Andrew Stringer.
4.
Councillor Dave Muller.
4.
Councillor John Field.
4.
Councillor John Matheson.
For refusal.
Councillor Lavinia Haddingham.
4.
Councillor Richard Mayer.
4.
And Councillor Sarah Mansell.
4.
Thank you, Chair. I make that as unanimous, Mr. Dupre.
Yes, I agree, unanimous.
Thank you. So then we move on to item number 8, site inspection. Which
sorry, Chair, we don't have any site inspections to report.
Okay, cool. So then I formally close the meeting at 1:18, and thanks very much. Sorry.
Oh, Chair, do you mind if I make a comment?
Sure.
On our earlier item in Thurston, sorry, I'll put the video on. In our earlier item in Thurston, it did say that in the conclusion that the most relevant documents were the neighbourhood plan documents. In future, could they be in the bundle? If they are the primary document in the officer's assessment, could we at least have those relevant policies in the document? because we can't then get a judgment. And it actually protracted this morning, because what we had to do was tease out all of that, and that would have been really helpful. Could have been on one page, just all of those relevant neighbourhood plan documents, if they are the primary source of the conclusion, which they were on that item. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks. Yeah, well, John, you can take that back, can't you?
I can, but equally, I'm not sure how to square that with all of the local plan, core strategy, and other primary documents. There's a lot of primary policies in that context. The other problem with the neighbourhood plan is that it was about 87 pages long, and you also have to understand the background text that goes with all of those policies. And I think specifically I highlighted policies today because I needed to, but in order to be fair to the entire neighbourhood plan, it does need to be read in its entire context. So I can take that back to Philip Isbell, but I don't know where we can go with that, and I will have to seek his guidance.
I've suddenly got loads of hands going up, so I'm not really sure what's going. Anyway, Sarah Mansell, would you like to say something?
Yeah, well, I've just flicked back through my documents, and on pages 17 and 18 of our paper bundle, we do have a summary of policies within our own plan. And then there is a title which says neighbourhood plan status, and it just says we're at a neighbourhood plan or something. Could we not have a list of the policies in a similar manner to the ones we have in our own local plan, because they all form part of our development plan?
It's fair enough. Yep. John Matheson, do you want to?
Yeah. With Sarah on that, I think that maybe what John needs to take back to Philip is that officers need to get used to the having a neighbourhood plan as a primary issue, and discussing it as much as they discuss the balancing of the MPPF in order to tilt the balance, if you see what I mean. So I think it unreasonable to have the whole 70